into his step because it was almost over. "Then we'll find it, and we'll bargain with it," Ezra said, jarring him out of his thoughts. "But we can't do any of that if they catch us. The only thing that will happen is they take the two of you into custody, and we will have absolutely nothing to bargain with." He pointed to the frosted glass doors. They shuddered as someone on the other side tried to open them. "Mr. Knight," Rupert was saying, "I'm going to need you to open these doors."
"Tucker, should we open the doors?"
Ronnie stared up at him.
"If you think we should talk to them, I'll come with you."
Like River had tried to go with Jax. The trouble was, Jax had earned his wife's loyalty. All he'd done so far for Ronnie was leave her alone and pregnant, and now he'd managed to separate her from their child. They were going to have to run through London's underground like rats in a maze, and Ronnie didn't even have a pair of shoes. All because he'd been impatient. He glanced at the monitor, and sure enough, the man outside the door now had several friends who looked ready to break it all down. He didn't have a choice. He had to put her first. He leaned over and shoved his arms under her knees, hauling her against his chest. He might have put her in this position, but he could make sure she didn't have to walk the path alone. Lead the way. He carried Ronnie toward the back of the hall where Damon proved he was always prepared. As Tucker followed Ezra into the dark tunnel, he vowed he would find what they needed, even if it killed him. Chapter 9. Ronnie looked around the gorgeous country home 3 days later and wished she could enjoy it on an aesthetic level. She knew she should appreciate the stunning ceilings and the stained glass windows, but all she saw was a million ways they were unsafe. The smell of coffee permeated, hitting her nose and reminding her that she had barely eaten in days, much less had a decent cup of coffee. But then, what mother ate when she didn't even know where her child was in the world? She stopped just before the hallway opened to the large great room. She could hear the sound of people talking. Ezra and Nina. They were saying something about how no one seemed to have followed them, and Ezra had reprogrammed the security cameras to watch all the possible entrances. They'd even placed some new ones to watch the woods around them. "Hey, I was going to see if you wanted some breakfast. Nina's making omelets." Tucker walked out from what appeared to be the kitchen. "I know it's been rough these last few days, but this is a safe place." It had been beyond rough. First, there had been the harrowing escape through London's underground tunnels. Despite the fact that Ezra and Nina had promised her no one would be able to find the hidden door unless Damon talked, she still had held on to Tucker like a lifeline. All through the long trudge below, he'd carried her, and she'd watched over his shoulder for signs that they were being chased. Every footstep Tucker had taken had put distance between her and Violet. They made their way to the small flat that served as one of McKay Taggart and Knight's safe houses. They'd stayed in the tiny one-bedroom flat until late last night, when Ezra and Nina had decided it was safe enough to move to this massive house in the English countryside. She'd been told it was owned by a member of the Garden, and was as safe as they could be. "Have you heard anything about Violet and my mom?" It was all she'd been able to think about for days. She hadn't seen or talked to her baby since they'd fled the Garden. The half-smile that had been on his face faded. "I checked the message board we're supposed to use. Ian's got them on a plane back to the States."
"Without me?"
They were going to be so far away. She'd never spent so much as a night away from Vi until 2 days ago, and now there would be a whole ocean between them. Tucker's voice dropped low, as though he didn't want the rest of them to hear what he was saying. "I would do anything to get you on that plane. Anything. Say the word and I'll turn myself in." That was the problem. There wasn't anything to do. She took a deep breath, trying to quell the emotions welling inside her. She knew they'd done what they had to do. Knew Tucker giving himself up wasn't going to help, but it didn't fix the anxiety and fear festering deep down in her gut.
No, of course not. That's absolutely not an option.
Nina's head popped around the corner. The former Interpol agent looked far cheerier than she had the last few days.
Hey, we have actual food that doesn't have to be reconstituted with boiling water. Do you want any veg in your omelette? Got onions, tomatoes, and spinach to go with some lovely ham I intend to thank Clive Weston for the next time I see him. Truly, the aristocracy lives so much better than the rest of us.
Weston. He owned the house they were staying at, and she'd heard it mentioned he was some kind of earl or something.
I don't know that I want anything.
She wasn't sure she could eat. Tucker frowned.
Come on. At least you can have some toast. You need to keep your strength up.
That was funny, because she wasn't sure she'd shown a lot of strength the last few days. She'd cried and felt sorry for herself. She'd asked endlessly about her daughter, but not about anyone else. These people had been kind to her, but she'd been caught up in her own misery. He turned and followed Nina into the ultra-modern kitchen. The rest of the house looked like Downton Abbey, but the kitchen was sleek and technologically advanced. There were big windows that let in the light. The kitchen felt normal, and that made her wary. Solo was pacing outside, walking back and forth in front of the windows, her cell phone to her ear and talking animatedly. Again, normal. Normal scared her right now.
Shouldn't she be inside?
The first day, she'd gotten a massive lecture on why she couldn't leave the flat. Ezra glanced up from the laptop he'd spent endless hours on the last few days. It was supposedly secure, and their only line of communications, besides 2 burner phones they were only to use in extreme emergencies. She'd thought her life in Germany had been restrictive. Her mother had nothing on Ezra Fane. She's under the awning. See how she stays close to the house? She's doing that so she can't be picked up on satellites. She knows what she's doing. Trust me. If there's one person in the world who knows how to take care of herself, it's Kim Solomon. Nina sighed as she flipped over an omelet.
I could be back at the garden, but no. I had to go downstairs after a workout to grab a water because I was too lazy to stock my flat. Listening to the two of you bicker has been a life lesson, I tell you. How did you ever stay married for years?
The faintest hint of a smile hit Ezra's face. Because when she's good, she's really good. He seemed to shake the feeling off. It will be better now that we've got some room. We won't be on top of each other all the time. How are you this morning, Veronica? Did Tucker fill you in on what happened last night? She was hungry for all the details.
He said Ian moved Vi and my mom. They're on a plane now. Will he tell us when they land? Is he with them?
Tucker nodded. Yes, he got them from London to Dublin. I have no idea how, but he's got connections. They're going out on a private plane his sister-in-law sent. They're going to land at a private airfield in New York and stay with Drew Lawless. That's Case's brother-in-law. Ian will go on to Dallas, but he's got bodyguards in place and a whole legal team waiting to see if anyone shows up on Drew's doorstep. They're safe, and Ian's going to find a way to let them call you. It was far better for them to be on U.S. soil. They had rights in the U.S. they didn't have here. Tucker stared at her for a moment. I'll ask him to send the plane for you in a day or two. I don't think that's a great idea, Ezra said.
For me? Not you?
She kept her attention on Tucker. He would be safer in the U.S. too. I can't leave. I need to be in Europe. There's every probability that I'm going to go to Paris as soon as Ezra and Nina decide it's okay to go, he explained. I'll make sure you're safe first. Did the clothes fit? He was good at deflecting from the real point. She'd learned that over the last few days. That first night he'd held her while she'd cried, but then he'd slept in the living room, offering the bedroom to her and Nina and Solo. She would rather have been on the couch with him. The previous night he'd tucked her into bed after the long drive and told her he needed to talk to Ezra. It had been hours before he'd crawled into bed, and he'd seemed so intent on not waking her, she'd pretended to sleep. He was feeling guilty. He thought he was the reason they were all in this position. She wasn't stupid. It was there in his every gesture, in the way he fell over himself if she wanted so much as a glass of water. She knew what his problem was. The trouble was, she felt guilty too, and she hadn't been handling it well.
"I don't know that I should leave you," she said, "especially since it puts our daughter in danger again. I don't know what I would do if I lead them straight to the safe house. They're looking for me. Asking about my mom and Vi was incidental. They're safe. You're not."
Neither are you. He put a hand on the table as though he needed it for balance. This was the other thing that had been happening. He was getting sicker and sicker.
"Is it another headache?"
She moved to his side. "It's nothing." That was what he'd been saying for days. She'd missed the signs that he wasn't well. She hadn't noticed Tucker wasn't eating until the night before, when he'd refused the sandwiches Nina had made. She tried to move in, but he dodged her, keeping the table between them. "I think I should go lay down. I didn't get much sleep last night. Tell Solo I'll be ready if she needs me." He strode out of the kitchen. Her heart sank. He was drawing away from her, and she might have missed her shot to keep him close.
"No matter what he says, he's not okay."
Nina put a plate in front of Ezra.
Watching Jax get taken into custody gutted him. It's what they've been desperate to avoid.
Yeah, well, knowing he's the reason his daughter is in hiding can't have been good for his state of mind, Ezra added.
It wasn't his fault.
That was the one thing she was sure of. Ezra took a drink of his coffee. Actually, when you think about it, it's Solo's fault. If she'd left you alone, Kronberg probably never comes after you. Nina's eyes widened in what couldn't be mistaken for anything but righteous indignation.
"You're the one who asked Solo to find her."
"No, I didn't ask Solo for anything," Ezra said with a shrug. "This is one more of her crazy stunts to try to prove to me she's changed. It happened to also lead to us being on the run and Jax in jail. That's how it goes with Solo. Everything she touches tends to turn to shit."
"I'm trying,"
a soft voice said. She turned and Solo was standing there, her cell peeking out of her pocket. Ezra frowned and hopped off his bar stool, flipping his laptop shut. "You always do, Kim, and it always ends up going wrong. I've got a secure call with Damon in 5. I'll be in the office. Thanks for breakfast, Nina." Nina looked back, one hand on her hip.
"Not that you actually ate it,"
she sighed.
"I don't know why I try."
"I'll take it." Solo slipped into Ezra's seat and picked up the fork he'd left behind.
"I've been living off scraps with him for years. Ronnie, I'm sorry. I was glad to hear Ian thinks he's got a safe spot to stash your mom and daughter. The Lawless building is secure, and Drew Lawless has enough government contacts that the agency will think twice about even approaching him."
That was good to know, and even more reason why she shouldn't go. If they were safe, going to the States could only give the agency or any of the intelligence groups a reason to think about upsetting the balance. And Ezra was wrong.
"I don't blame you."
Solo smiled faintly.
"It's okay. Beck can blame me enough for both of you." "Why do you call him Beck?" "Because that's his name. Beckett Kent. Ezra Fane was his half-brother. He was on a special operations team, and he died on a mission I sent him on over Beck's very vocal objections.
She said the words without a hint of emotion, as though she'd been over and over them so often, she couldn't quite feel them anymore. Guilt. It seemed to be a thing today.
Well, I don't blame you for coming to find me. I know it might have been the catalyst that started this fire, but I think it was always going to start. Has anyone considered the fact that it's not Veronica that upset the fragile balance? Nina asked, setting a tray of toast on the island. But they raided the garden only a few days after I showed up, Ronnie pointed out. It takes more than a few days to plan something like the other night. I should know. I've been involved. It would have taken a while just to get MI6 and German intel on the same page. Nina sat down beside Solo. I think the turning point was when the lads broke into Kronberg. That was when Kronberg realized they were sitting on a bomb that hasn't gone off yet. But it will. I think having Tucker walk back into that building is what made them move, and fast. The fact that there was an agency team there would have been icing on the cake. Solo held up her fork. Then see, still my fault. Although I would like to point out I was hauling in a rogue agent. And you coordinated with BND. Nina looked expectant, though it was obvious she knew the answer to the question. No, Solo admitted. Nina pointed her way. See, there it is. But then Ezra wouldn't have either. It's the nature of your job. Secrets and obfuscation. I worked in a far more transparent place. I like the world better in black and white. But that's neither here nor there. The point is the lads woke this particular sleeping beast, not Veronica. Levi Green pushed them to do it. So I say we stash the guilt and deal with the problem head-on. That's what I'm trying to do, Solo said. Now that we're here and have some space, I have a plan. But I need Tucker for this plan, and that means he can't make himself sick. He was doing it for her. For her and Violet and Jax. He was trying so hard to fix the problem, but this wasn't something he could plow his way through. And being apart wasn't helping the situation. He was spiraling, and there was no one to catch him. From what she understood, he'd had the support of his brothers through everything. Since the moment he'd been rescued, he'd had those men to surround him and understand him. Then in the last few weeks, he'd lost 2 of his brothers, one to betrayal and the other betrayed. But he had to feel both deaths. And now he felt like he'd abandoned Vi. He had to feel close to losing her, too. In some ways, he wanted to. Sending her away would be the final blow. Sometimes there was a relief that came with knowing you couldn't lose anything else. She knew that feeling, but she couldn't let him push her out because losing her would be freeing. She'd been in a state of numbness, where only her own grief and panic had stirred anything inside her, but it was time to take control. Her mother would have already poked her enough that she would have to come out of her shell. Her mother never backed down from either challenge or tragedy. Even when Katie had been killed, her mom was the one who'd realized the threat and acted to protect her daughter and unborn granddaughter. Her mother would do anything to protect Vi, and honestly, she would put Sandra Croft up against a CIA team any day of the week. It was past time to be more like her mother. Her mother would never let a person she loved drown in guilt. She loved him. She'd loved him when he was Stephen Reeser. She loved him as Tucker Jones. She just loved him. What's the plan? She reached out and grabbed a piece of toast. She might not be hungry, but she didn't want to get weak, and that meant normalizing. It was time to be strong. Solo looked up from her eggs. Are you in now? I was worried you were going to be dead weight. I'm in, and I assure you I might not be dead weight, but I will be a pain in your ass if you get Tucker into more trouble. I don't care what the American government wants. I only care about getting Jax free and finding a way to clear Tucker's name. Whatever his actual name is.
Nina's lips turned up in a grin.
Thank God. He needs someone to take him in hand.
Solo passed her the butter.
It's good to have another team member. I'm afraid the guys are super emotional. We need more solid logic. So yes, I have a plan. Now that we're in a safe location, I've called in some favors, and I'm bringing in a couple of people I think can help Tucker remember. Rebecca told me she thinks the cure Levi gave Tucker is actually working, at least partially. He's been remembering more and more. Yes, he has. And before all that crap went down, he was handling it quite well. He was doing everything Ariel and Rebecca had taught him to do. He was letting it flow. He would talk about it, but he wouldn't try to force the memory, she explained. The only times he would be tempted to was when he thought about his brother.
Solo sat up a little straighter.
His brother? I haven't heard he thought he had a brother.
She sat back again.
Maybe you should wait to talk about this. You have to understand that I'm here on Ezra's sufferance. He might not want me to know everything. I trust you.
Solo had done nothing but reunite her family. Nina nodded her way.
Go on. I'd like to hear about it too. And Solo's here. She's part of this, and she didn't have to be. She could have walked at any moment. Is she doing it to try to get her husband back? Probably. But the good news is her husband would be super pissed if she betrayed us. Ergo, we can trust her. Your way with logic is spot on, Solo said, before turning back to Ronnie. Now what's this about a brother? He remembers a brother. He said his name was Ace. He can't see a face, but he knows Ace was older than him. I don't know if this helps solve the mystery of whether or not he stole that intel, but I know it's on his mind a lot, she explained. Is there any way to find his family? MacDonald was excellent at covering her tracks.
Nina crossed to the coffee pot and filled a mug.
We actually know what Robert's name is, and we haven't been able to find his mother or brother. His wife has a small footprint, but it didn't lead to Robert. According to Levi, Robert's family might still be alive, Solo said, but he's not talking about that to me. He got the data Jax found at a highly secret Black Ops site called The Ranch. I wasn't allowed to study that data. I suspect it had a ton of information on MacDonald's subjects. It could be how he knew so much about Robert's family and what Tucker was doing. Or it could be complete bullshit. Levi lies, and often. But even the devil knows that the best lie contains a hint of the truth.
Nina offered her the mug. Ronnie was more than happy to take it. She needed some caffeine.
So you think these people you're bringing in might help him remember? That's what Big Tag thinks, Solo replied. It's a gamble on my end, but it's one I've got to take. I don't care what Nina says. I don't think Jax gets hauled in if I hadn't brought you to the garden. I owe River a lot. I like Jax. I can't let this stand. I have to fix this. And honestly, it was my agency that allowed MacDonald to work. I want those names. I want to know who sold out Robert and Jax and Tucker. And all the rest. Justice might have been served on Hope MacDonald, but there are still people out there who haven't paid their debt. I'm going to be the bill collector.
Solo's voice had gone cold, and Ronnie was happy she was on that woman's team.
How do I help Tucker?
There was still a fear in the back of her mind that Tucker remembering who he'd been could have terrible consequences, but she couldn't let fear rule her. He cared about her now. He'd cared about her then. She had to have a little faith. Solo seemed to think about that.
Mostly you can get him to relax. It's going to be a rough afternoon, and I think if he goes into this with a bad attitude, it might not work.
Luckily, she knew exactly how to get that man to relax. And maybe it would help her, too. Tucker stood in the bedroom he and Ronnie had been assigned to. He should have taken his own. It wasn't fair to ask her to sleep with him, and there were plenty of rooms in this massive place. Ezra wanted them all in one wing, but he could just deal with it. She'd only had sex with him once. She shouldn't be forced into a relationship she probably didn't want. Couldn't want, since he kept fucking up and getting her in trouble. He'd promised her he wouldn't lie to her again, but how could he know if he was lying now? How could he truly know what he'd been doing that day? What if he'd been using her as cover to do something nefarious? He'd spent hours going over and over everything that he could have been doing the day he'd been taken. Everyone was optimistic that he'd magically seen the light and realized that what MacDonald had been doing was wrong, or that he'd somehow gotten recruited by Green either before or after he'd gone to work for MacDonald. What if he'd been covering his own ass? Or worse, what if he'd been selling MacDonald out for cash? Didn't that sound more like something a man with the nickname of Razor would do? Hey, are you ready for that shower you promised me? He turned, and there was Veronica standing in the doorway. She was wearing shorts and a t-shirt. It was one of 3 changes of clothes she had in the whole world. The only reason she had those was Clive Weston had his assistant drive them out before they arrived. She'd been forced to sleep in one of Tucker's t-shirts. It hung to her knees and made her look soft and sweet, and he'd wanted to wrap her up and promise her everything would be all right. Then he'd remembered she'd spent the last 2 days crying because she missed her baby, and her own future was in question. Wait, what had she said? I'm sorry, did you need to take a shower? I can leave. She gave him a sunny smile, a thing he hadn't seen out of her in days. I wasn't asking you to leave, Tucker. I was asking you to join me. You promised me a lot out of that shower, and then the world blew up, and it seems to me you forgot. She crossed the room, walking to him and going up on her toes. Her head tilted, and her lips hovered close to his. His cock responded, tightening and stretching like the fucker wanted to play. He couldn't play right now. Could he? No, he couldn't. It wasn't fair to her. Ronnie, you don't have to do this. I'll take care of you. You don't have to offer me sex. She was suddenly flat-footed again, and her eyes had gone from soft to hard as emeralds and twice as cold. Excuse me? Fuck. What had he done wrong? Because he'd definitely done something wrong to put that look on her face. Ronnie was always sweet. She never lost her temper. Well, she hadn't before. She'd always been patient. I was trying to explain. Go on, she said as if she hadn't interrupted. I would love to hear this explanation since what I heard was you saying our sexual relationship was based on me giving you my body in exchange for your protection. Like a hooker. No, baby, not like a hooker. All the hookers I've ever met wanted cash. I don't have any cash. I can't offer it to you. He knew the minute the words were out of his mouth that he'd made another mistake. Her eyes went wide, and that wasn't wonder in them. You've been self-aware for like 2 minutes, but you already figured out how to hire a hooker? They all looked like you. She turned and her shoulders shook, her hand going to her mouth. God, Ronnie, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for you to know, he said, his voice hoarse. I'm such a dumbass. Please don't cry. She turned and she was laughing. Sorry, it's like when your baby's first word sounds an awful lot like shit, and you don't want to encourage her. I blame my mom for that, by the way. She's got a potty mouth and she won't even try to fix it. Was she playing a game with him? He stepped back. What's going on, Ronnie? She wiped her eyes because she'd laughed so much she'd cried.
You're a little crazy, you know. So hookers. I was raising your daughter, and you were running around with hookers?
That wasn't the whole story. I was also getting shot at and trying to remember who I am. I got the shit kicked out of me a couple of times. And I have bad dreams. And sometimes I didn't actually sleep with the hookers. They can be nice to talk to. Her expression softened.
Tucker, you didn't remember me. I can't exactly yell at you for cheating on a woman you didn't know existed. But I can get upset that you seem to think I'm using you for protection. I assure you, I can get protection. I'm not exactly without skills. I grew up with G.I. Jane as a mom. Do you know the only thing worse than a soldier? A soldier who also happens to be a nurse.
You can't protect yourself from these people. He knew Sandra was capable, and she would have taught her daughter self-defense, but they were up against highly trained operatives with connections they couldn't even understand.
I'm not sleeping with you because I think that's the only way you'll protect me. I know I've been a mess the last few days. I haven't been apart from Violet before, and I didn't handle it well,
she said, an unnecessary apology in her tone. You shouldn't handle it well. You shouldn't have to handle it at all. She moved close to him again.
I don't blame you.
How could she not? It's my fault. Her hands found his chest, gently touching him like he was fragile, and she didn't want to break him.
Did you ask for this? Did you ask the universe to take all of your memories and torture you? Because I'm damn straight sure I didn't ask for the father of my child to be taken away from me. I didn't ask for my sister to be killed and to have to hide for years. So the way I see it, it's neither of our faults. But the way we're acting now is.
The way I'm acting? He took a step back, because if he didn't, he was going to get his hands on her, and then they wouldn't have this very necessary talk. I assure you I'm not acting. And you can't possibly know that this isn't my fault. We don't know what I was doing. She sighed, an exasperated sound.
I don't care what you were doing.
You aren't listening to me. Her head shook.
No, you aren't listening to me. I don't care what you did then. If we find out you were leaving me behind, my question to you is going to be, what do you want now?
That was the real heartbreak of the situation. He knew exactly what he wanted. You. I want you. I want you and Violet, and hell, I want your crazy-ass mother as my family. But that can't happen because I'm going to ruin you. I'm going to ruin all of you. I love you so fucking much, but everything I touch turns toxic.
I'm not toxic.
Your situation is.
Only if we let it be, she insisted. And I don't think Robert or Jax or Owen would say they're toxic either. I heard you saved Stephanie Carter once.
That seemed like so long ago. He'd felt worthy that day. Right until the moment he'd learned he'd been called Dr. Razor because he cut so deep. It was then he'd realized how arrogant he'd been, thinking he could be the hero. I was dumb enough to let myself be taken because I had a microchip. They had to chip me like a dog so they might be able to find me. I was nothing but a homing beacon. A frustrated groan came from her mouth.
A homing beacon doesn't make the choice to save someone. It doesn't have to think about whether or not they'll die in the effort. Do you know what I've done the last few days?
Hidden in a too-tight apartment and cried because you didn't know if your daughter was dead or alive. She rolled her eyes.
Before that. Since I came to the garden, a couple of times a day, someone would show up wherever I happened to be, and they would plead your case. Oh, they didn't come out and say that's what they were doing, but I caught on pretty quickly. Robert talked to me about how loyal you are. Owen told me the story of how you helped him in those first days after he was dosed with McDonald's drugs. You took care of him, and you didn't even know him. He hadn't been in the compound with you for more than a day. Ariel and Rebecca tag-teamed me with how amazing you are. Jax said he doesn't survive any of this without you. She was forgetting a salient point. Jax was in hell because of him. He still might not. They love you. Even the big guy and the scary Brit. You're worried that you're going to remember and you'll turn back into the cold, selfish, evil person you used to be. But I'm telling you, you were never that person. You were real with me. I don't know why you put on that act with everyone else, but you were real with me. He wanted to believe her so badly. How can you know that? She moved in again, putting her hands on him and looking up, her eyes intent upon him. Because when you were at the bottom, when you were in hell and every moment was agony, you weren't selfish at all. You sacrificed. You gave. You made a family for yourself in the worst conditions, a family that still loves and supports you. Tucker, we're not defined by how we behave when times are perfect. It's who we are when we're half dead on the ground and everything seems hopeless that counts. I've been a mess for days, but it's time to take a cue from my mom and get up and fight. It's time to follow in the footsteps of the best man I've ever met. I'm not going to roll into a ball and forget that there are people who need me. At my worst, I want to be open and kind and strong and compassionate. I want to be like you. Emotion welled deep inside him at her words. He wanted to be that man. Wanted to know deep inside that he could be the kind of father and husband Ronnie could be proud of. He hadn't even known he wanted to be a dad, but now that he'd met Vi, he knew he couldn't fail her. He let his head drop to Ronnie's, the contact piercing through the veil of self-loathing that had threatened to swallow him whole since that moment he'd realized what he would cost them all. I want to be good enough for you. I want it more than anything. Then come to the shower with me, and let's take a few hours off. There's nothing we can do. You trust Ian Taggart? He nodded. None of us would be alive without him. He and Damon, they risked everything to protect us. He won't let anything happen to our daughter. Then be with me. I'm going to go and get ready for whatever today holds. I would like very much to do that with you. If you can't, I understand. But you should know I'll ask you every day. Being together is a choice. I choose you, Tucker. I hope you can do the same for me. She turned and strode into the shower. Brat. She'd just put him in an impossible position. She'd basically said, I choose you, please choose me too. Like they were kids, and it was as simple as checking a box on a note he would pass back to her friend, and they'd giggle about it and everything was easy and innocent. What wasn't innocent about the way he felt about her? The easy part was a given. They weren't kids, and honestly, it wouldn't have been easy if they were. They were human, and that meant everything was complicated. He heard the shower turn on, and a wave of longing hit him hard. Was he treating her the way Tag had accused him? As some prize to be won? Earning her love had more to do with how he treated her, the priority he placed on her, than martyring himself. Why would it be wrong to take what she was offering? If he gave it all back to her, what was wrong with accepting the comfort that would come from being close to her? He hadn't even answered the question in his head before he was standing in the doorway of the magnificent bathroom, watching as she stepped into the shower.
Steam was already pouring through the room, and she'd swept her hair up. She was naked, her skin luminous in the natural light. It had been morning. Soft light flowing into the conference room. No one had turned on the overhead lights, so there was practically a halo around the head of the woman staring out at the cityscape, the Frauenkirche's twin towers in the distance. She'd turned, and he'd stopped. Stopped breathing. Stopped thinking. Stopped doing anything but looking at her.
Hi. I'm Veronica, the new intern. Everyone calls me Ronnie.
It had been right there on the tip of his tongue to tell her his name. His real name. He'd been ready to reach out his hand and introduce himself when the lights to the conference room had flickered on, and that voice banged against his comm.
We don't need interns in this meeting.
Hope MacDonald had strode in, every hair in place, and wearing a Chanel suit that likely cost more than his mother made in a month.
I was looking at the skyline. You've got an amazing view here,
Veronica had said. Ronnie. Everyone called her Ronnie.
Yes, and we've earned it by being the best in the building, MacDonald said. When you've worked your way up, you'll be welcome to stare as much as you like. Until then, your place is in the basement.
Her smile dimmed, and she nodded, holding her notebook against her chest as she walked to the door.
Of course, Dr. MacDonald.
I'm Stephen, he said as she brushed past him. Dr. Reeser. She gave him a hint of a smile and a nod as she exited the room and started back toward the elevators that would take her down where the sun wouldn't caress her skin.
Interns. Well, we'll have to watch that one, MacDonald said.
Yes, he would have to watch out for her. She didn't know it, but she was stuck in hell, and that demon in front of him could tear her up. He had to make sure she didn't.
Tucker?
He came out of the memory at the sound of her voice. For a moment, he'd been there. He'd not simply had a sliver of memory, he'd been there, like it had happened to him. It had happened to him. The first time I saw you, it was morning. You were in the conference room on the 5th floor. You introduced yourself to me. MacDonald walked in, and she was a bitch to you. Ronnie stood in the entryway to the shower and seemed comfortable with her nudity, a soft smile playing on her lips as though she remembered too.
She sent me to the basement because I wasn't one of the big boys. But I remember that you stopped me and introduced yourself. Everyone had warned me about you, but you were nice to me. You didn't look at me like I was something less.
He'd known even then that she was more. I wanted to protect you from her. I knew she was bad. I wanted to tell you my name. My real name. Stephen Reeser isn't my real name, but I can't. She stepped out and put her hands on either side of his face.
Don't. You don't have to know right now. It will come to you or it won't, and forcing it will only make you sick. You're remembering, and it's exactly what I said. You were always you. It's a puzzle that doesn't completely make sense yet, but when we put it all together, you're going to be you, Tucker. You're going to be the brave, sweet, amazing man I've come to know.
He'd wanted to protect her. He wasn't sure if that meant he was innocent or if he'd simply not wanted a pretty girl to get hurt, but he would take it. He might have become Stephen Reeser at some point, but there was someone else beneath it all. Someone who cared about her. He lowered his mouth to hers and let the memory slide away as their tongues tangled and his hands found her silky flesh. He didn't care that she was damp from stepping into the shower and she was plastered against his clothes. He wouldn't be in them for long. She was right. They needed this. He'd been wrong to think for a second that they should be apart. He kissed her over and over, backing her into the shower. He managed to get his shirt off, tossing it to the side. Ronnie stepped back, going under the spray from the shower and managing to look both shockingly innocent and like a sex goddess all at the same time. Because there was nothing not innocent about sex. Not when it was about pleasure and joy. Like all things in the world, it could be corrupted, but it was a joyful act. It was a necessary act, because he wasn't whole if he couldn't touch her. He shoved his jeans and boxers off. She didn't care about the scars on his body. She liked him. She wanted him. It was all he could ask. He stalked into the shower after her, his sorrow and self-pity rapidly morphing into hunger. Days had passed, and he hadn't felt close to her. He needed more than close now. He needed to be inside her, surrounded by her. He needed to know she was still his because he wanted so badly to be hers. His cock was already hard and ready to go. He didn't care about anything with the exception of her. He felt feral as he towered over her. Ronnie's hands came out, stroking down his body like he was a predator she could soothe. And she could, because something in him eased the moment she touched him. I know things are stressful, and you feel like it's all on your shoulders, but I'm with you. You're not alone. We get through this together, she said. She'd made her choice. He'd given her every out, and now he would take her at her word. She wanted him? Oh, she would have him. He would give her everything. He kissed her again, bringing their bodies together. The water was warm, but she was so much hotter. He gripped her ass, grinding his cock lightly against her belly. Her nails raked against his back, and he happily took the little pain. She was here with him. She was right. They were in this together, and she was his partner. He owed her everything, and that included faith. Faith in his team, in them as a couple. Faith in himself. Tucker, I want to play, she said as he kissed his way down her neck. I want to touch you. I didn't get to explore the way I wanted to. Please. We've only made love a few times, and it was always about me. I want to explore you, too. I want to know every inch of your body. She was going to make him crazy. He wanted to know exactly what she was talking about. You want to touch my cock? She nodded. Yes. Because if you touch my cock, I'll want you to suck my cock. I've been too impatient. You know I've wanted that always. I needed to show you how much you mean to me, and that meant giving you everything. He'd tied her up in the privacy room because he'd wanted to show her how he would treat her, like she was a queen, and he worshipped her. Then give me this. I need to show you how I feel, too. Her eyes were on him as she dropped to her knees. His whole body tightened in anticipation. She licked her lips as she wrapped her hand around his dick. He forced himself to breathe. Lick me, Ronnie. He'd felt such attraction to her that first day. It had shocked him, as though he'd thought there couldn't be anything good in the place he found himself in. She'd been sunshine in the gloom. She still was. She stroked him and leaned forward, brushing her lips over him. Her tongue came out and dragged over his cockhead. His eyes nearly rolled in the back of his head. Her mouth was soft. So fucking soft. His cock was rolled in hot, wet silk. Her tongue moved all over, not missing an inch of his dick as she moved her head up and down. He hissed as her teeth lightly scratched against him, the tiny pain immediately flaring into pleasure. She started to move away, likely to apologize. He caught the back of her head and directed her to continue. Give it all to me. I can take it. Don't stop until I tell you to," he growled and flexed inside her. Her eyes flared, and she settled in again, her hands coming up to cup his ass. Her nails dug in lightly as though she'd figured out he didn't mind a bite of pain. He didn't. He kind of craved it, but only coming from her. It meant she was involved, so involved she wasn't thinking about anything but being in the moment with him. She deep-throated him, and he knew he wasn't going to last. "Baby, I'm going to come." Her hands tightened on his cheeks, and she sucked him harder. She wanted him to come in her mouth. The thought of her drinking him down brought out something primal in him. She was his. She was making the conscious decision to put off her own pleasure so he could have this moment, give him this moment. She stroked him with her tongue, lips caressing while her hands pressed on his ass, directing him to give to her everything he had. The orgasm spiked through him, making him shudder, even as she groaned around his dick. He let go, thrusting into her mouth and letting the sensation flow through him, binding him to her. He was weak in the knees by the time she stood. There was the wickedest, sexiest grin on her face, and she pointedly licked her lips. "See, that was fun," she said, her voice going husky. He was so in love with her. He kissed her, tasting himself on her lips. "Let's see if we can have even more fun." Chapter 10. Tucker walked into the great room as quietly as he possibly could. Something was going on. He'd heard a bunch of movement as he'd walked down the hallway, doors opening and closing, feet scooting across the floors, and harsh whispers. Whatever drama was going on, he wasn't a part of it. How the world had changed. A few short weeks ago, he would have gone looking for the drama. He would have popped some corn and found the best seat he could to watch whatever was going on play out in front of him. Now he didn't have the time. He was going to sneak into the kitchen, grab a couple of waters, and hope no one saw him before he could sprint back to their bedroom. He'd left Ronnie napping after a long session in bed. She hadn't slept well the past few nights. "It's better when your arms are around me." He probably had the stupidest grin on his face. He ducked into the kitchen, and Nina was sitting at the table, a book in her hand. She took one look at him and shook her head.
"Well, at least one of us is getting some. You know the worst part about being on the run? There's nothing to do except eat and watch telly and have sex with the incredibly handsome billionaire you happen to be on the run with."
She gestured to the book in her hand.
"And read a bit. For a stuffy nobleman, Clive's got some fun books. I'm on my third romance since I got here. Why can't I find my own hot, needs-a-woman-to-fix-him billionaire?"
He was going to keep Ronnie away from the library. He could totally give her a guy to fix. He was the king of broke-down guys, but he was also pretty actually broke, and she didn't need any ideas. "Maybe Damon can put you on bodyguard duty. You know, once we can all show our faces in the world again without getting arrested." "What's going on out there?" Nina glanced at the great room. It was open to the kitchen.
"Not sure. Solo walked in about 10 minutes ago and asked to have a word with Ezra. Then there was some door slamming and whispering on mobiles. Now they're both out in the garage. Maybe they're having sex too. Everyone's having sex but me."
Another change. Weeks ago he would have been offering himself up to the lovely operative. He would have been giving her his most seductive smile and trying to coax her into giving him a try. The thought was distasteful now, and not because Nina wasn't wonderful. Because he belonged to Ronnie, and even flirting was off limits now. Do we have any word on Jax? Should he be this happy when Jax was potentially being tortured? Nina seemed to sober too, as if Jax's very name was enough to bring them all back to reality.
He's still at MI6 headquarters, and they're allowing Damon to see him. I believe that's Solo's doing. Apparently she's cut some kind of deal with them. Damon isn't being accused of harboring a fugitive at this time, but I get the feeling all that changes if we take too long. Solo can only hold out while they've got some patience. We're all at a standstill until she can deliver.
Until he could deliver. That was what she really meant, but was far too polite to say. What Solo was trying to deliver existed only in Tucker's head, and his head didn't want to cooperate. Is Ariel coming up? Ian mentioned something about wanting me to try hypnosis again.
I think that's what all the drama outside is about, Nina explained. I heard Solo say she's bringing someone in from London.
Maybe Rob would come with her. It would be good to see him. Rob had a strange way of balancing him out. Jax might be his best friend in the world, but Rob was a steady influence on him. Rob always felt safe. It would be good to talk to Rob about everything that was happening with Ronnie. Rob would probably talk him out of doing stupid shit like asking her to marry him right now. Rob would convince him he should wait until he could at least get a ring, and until he didn't have cops across the globe looking to arrest him. River knew what it felt like to have her husband dragged away in handcuffs. That thought sobered him entirely. I'm going to sneak back to my bedroom. Ronnie's napping, and I don't want to leave her for long, he admitted. Let me know if you need help with dinner.
Can you cook?
He shrugged. Not at all, but I can add much-needed sarcasm. Ronnie could cook. She'd made dinner at the garden. It had been simple but filling, and he'd adored those nights when they sat around a table together and talked about their days. He missed Violet. He missed her sweet face and how she clung to him like he was worthy of being her dad. He'd barely known her for a week, but there was a hole inside him now that only she could fill. It was the same with Ronnie. He wanted his family together. Was River sitting somewhere in London wishing she'd never met Jax? He seriously doubted it. She was at the garden holed up with her big mutt, Buster, and praying for her husband's well-being. She would be grateful for every moment they'd had together, and work hard to have more good days with him. He wasn't going back to that old thinking. Ronnie had made her choice, and now it was up to him to be worthy of her. Are you fucking crazy? Ezra walked in from the hallway that led to the garage. He was wearing jeans and a t-shirt, boots on his feet. He immediately pivoted and turned to face Solo, who walked in behind him. Do you know how dangerous this could be?
What other choice do we have, Beck?
The normally exquisitely dressed lady was dressed down, due to the lack of a handy mall to outfit her for their hideout. She was in yoga pants, a t-shirt and sneakers, her massive blonde hair in a high ponytail.
I have to do something no matter what the risk is. I've been prepping for this for days.
There is no way to truly prep for this, Ezra shot back. Unless this is all some scam. Are you in this with him? He should have moved way faster. The last thing he needed was to get caught in an Ezra Solo throwdown. They happened way too often and went on far too long. He started to try to ease his way into the kitchen. Maybe there was another way to get back to Ronnie. But a third person walking into the room made him stop in his tracks. Nina was suddenly beside him.
Is that who I think it is?
Nina whispered the question. The man who walked in would likely command whatever space he occupied. He had dark blonde hair cut at a fashionable length, but there was no denying the man had a military air about him. He strode in, brown eyes focused on the argument playing out in front of him. His expression was completely shuttered, as though he didn't truly care about the outcome of the fight. He was merely waiting to see what he would need to do next, and he would carry that mission out with the same ruthlessness that had likely kept the White House in the current president's hands. Connor Sparks. Tucker whispered back like Sparks was Voldemort, and no one should say his name aloud. Though Sparks had always played for the good guys. At least that was the way Big Tag explained it. When they'd first joined the London team, they'd been given a thorough class on the key political situations around the world, and part of that had included the men close to President Zach Hayes. He'd paid particular attention to Connor Sparks, since he was not only one of the president's closest friends, but an intelligence officer.
Yeah, that's what I thought. What has Solo gotten us into?
Nina stared at the scene in front of her. Connor Sparks was a legend at the agency, mostly because almost no one at the agency would admit he'd ever worked for the CIA. That's what happened when a CIA operative also happened to be close friends with a man who'd ended up being the President of the United States. Of course, the rumor was Solo had been working for President Hayes for a long time. "You can't mean to do this," Ezra was saying. Solo crossed her arms over her chest. "Do you have any idea the hoops I had to go through to bring him here?" Ezra wasn't backing down. "Do you have any idea the hoops I'm going to throw him through? Hint, they will all be on fire, and there will be a vat of acid at the end of them." "Maybe we should talk about this, Solo," Sparks said with a frown. Solo waved him off. "He's good at hyperbole." "He's also not an employee," Sparks pointed out. "He was let go. He has no security clearance at all." "I believe the word you're looking for is burned." Ezra turned on the newcomer. "Yeah, thanks for that, buddy." Sparks held up his hands as though pushing back on the claim. "Hey, that wasn't my call. I don't technically work for the agency anymore. I'm at the White House for the time being, and work directly with the president." "Then what are you doing here?" Ezra asked, staring at the guy. If Sparks was intimidated at all, he didn't show it. "I handle things for the president from time to time, and this is a special case. President Hayes has taken an interest in this one. He doesn't like the idea of these drugs being out in the world. This happened partially on his watch, and he wants it cleaned up before there's a scandal and the world knows our soldiers were used as lab rats. The Brits and the Germans are willing to work with us." "So you want the data in order to sweep the whole thing under the rug?" Ezra sounded like he wouldn't believe any answer he was given. "We want to know who worked with the McDonalds. German intelligence wants to know who from Kronberg knew what was going on," Sparks explained. "There will be repercussions. They won't be public. Yes, we want to keep this out of the press, but we're not going to allow anyone to treat our soldiers this way." German intelligence brought a Kronberg employee with them. Tucker stepped out into the great room. He didn't like the idea that the agency might sweep it all under the rug. He certainly didn't like the idea that they would go into this wide-eyed. Sparks's expression softened, and he stepped forward, holding out a hand. "You must be Tucker. Connor Sparks. It's good to meet you. And let me assure you the president is working on clearing your name." "I don't know my name." He sighed, but he shook the man's hand. "But I appreciate anything you can do for me and my brothers." "Jax is fine," Solo said. "I'm trying to make sure he stays that way. Damon is checking on him, and they let River visit him yesterday." "Jax is in a holding cell," Ezra pointed out. "I assure you he's not fine." Sparks stepped back. "Unfortunately, I can't get involved in freeing Mr. Seaborn. According to all our records, he doesn't exist. Neither do you, Tucker. It's why it's so important we figure out what happened and how she hid your identities." "And if the CIA helped her do it?" Nina stared at Sparks. "Then the agency will have a shake-up they won't see coming," Sparks promised. "From the accent, I'm going to assume you're Ms. Blunt, former Interpol. You have to understand why it's important the president isn't involved. Your own organization is actively looking for these men." "Former organization," Nina replied. "And yes, if Interpol knew the President of the United States was even thinking about harboring men with red notices, there would be a scandal. I understand that,
But I would be careful with MI6 and the Germans. I'm sure they're telling you Kronberg is helping with their investigation, but that's a major German corporation, and that means they'll protect them like the asset they are.
They don't want the list of names out any more than we do, Sparks said. We can work with them or against them. Allies are funny things. They can turn on a dime, but sometimes it's best to keep them close. This is Solo's op. The President has complete confidence in her. He glanced down at his watch, and then back to Solo. You're sure you want to do this? I don't like the look in your ex's eyes. You know we expect him back in one piece. Then you should take him right back to the U.S., Ezra swore. Because I can't assure you that he'll leave this house alive. Tucker knew he was missing some important part of the conversation. He didn't think the he they were talking about was Sparks. Solo sighed, a long, suffering sound. I'll keep them apart. I've got a room ready for him. The owner of this place has some interesting hobbies. There's an actual jail cell in one of the rooms. I checked it out, and it should hold him nicely. Hold him? Something was going on that he didn't understand. I thought you were bringing Ariel up so she can put me under hypnosis. She's on her way up here now, Solo said. She and Robert are bringing up some more people Ezra won't like. Ezra's eyes were like laser beams focused on his ex-wife. What the hell have you done? Have you forgotten that these men are my responsibility? She frowned his way. Talk to Damon and Tag. They approved the plan because it's the only way we keep MI6 from pulling out the big guns. They already raided the garden, Ezra shot back. How much bigger are those guns going to get? Sparks whistled. You said he was a do-gooder, Solo. You didn't tell me he was naive. I didn't know you could work for the agency for that long and still be so innocent. Solo turned to Ezra. A lot bigger, and you know it. I promise you that everything I'm doing is to protect Jax and Tucker. And you. All he knew was he wanted to work with Ariel. If this was about her getting to come up here, he was going to weigh in. I need to figure this out. We know the intel is probably somewhere in Paris. At least, we're certain that's where I lost it. I need something to spark my memory. The drugs Green gave me seem to be working, but it's not fast enough. Because you were never patient, a deep voice said. A chill went up his spine, and he watched as Levi Green was guided through the door by two men he'd never seen before. Guards. They were probably CIA agents, and they'd been sent to transport Green here. His hands and feet were locked in heavy chains, and he'd lost weight from the last time he'd seen the man. He looked lean and hungry, as if the past few weeks had robbed him of his ability to pretend to be anything but the predator he was. He'd never understood how much of Green's mask came from the clothes he wore. He normally was very stylish, presenting himself as something of a hipster with his pork pie hats and suspenders. He had a cool vibe he cultivated. He hid behind. This was the real man, and his eyes practically ate Solo up. His hair was longer than usual, and it tumbled over his forehead as though he'd recently thrashed around. Hello, Solo. I knew you would come for me eventually. You know, darling, you didn't have to put me in chains. I would have come willingly. Don't I always help you when you need it? When you're lonely and wanting, I'm always there for you. Fuck. Ezra had gone still. Not the kind of still that happens when someone's tired. It was the kind that happened right before a man committed a vicious murder. Solo stepped between the men. Spare me, Levi. You know why you're here. And I've got a nice cell with your name on it. Gentlemen, if you'll follow me, we can get this exchange over with, and you can head back to the States. I'm serious. Sparks was watching Ezra like he might lose his shit at any moment. If you can't protect him, I need to take him back with me.
He's been working with the agency and he's got a surprising amount of intelligence we need.
Because he's been playing everyone for years, Ezra said between clenched teeth.
And you know as well as I do that if he's got the right information, he can buy his way out of a lot of trouble, Sparks said with a sigh. He's got a deal. If he can help Tucker Jones find the information we need, the agency will be willing to reconsider his incarceration.
A completely humorless laugh came from Ezra's throat.
Isn't that handy? He causes the problem in the first place, and now he's also the solution. That sounds about right.
Sparks stared at Ezra, his eyes sharp as he took the former operative in.
He doesn't know?
Solo's jaw went tight.
I haven't talked to him about it. Mr. Kent, or Fane, or whatever you choose to call yourself, Sparks began. You should give her some more credit. She held the line on this one. She wouldn't give up your location so we can get this done unless we agreed to give you your job back. If this mission goes well, you'll be back at the agency with full pay and benefits. You'll get your old job back and the records will reflect that your firing was in error.
I don't want my old job back. And this is a mistake. He's got something up his sleeve, and it will all go to hell in the end. Ezra turned and walked away. Solo took a long breath, as though banishing whatever it was she felt.
The deal still holds. I'll get you what everyone wants, and Ezra, Tucker, and Jax get their records erased. They get a clean slate. What they do with it is up to them.
Agreed. Sparks shook her hand.
But that man has problems. Problems you can't solve.
She sniffled slightly and a smile curved her lips up.
You only say that because your wife wants to set me up.
A brilliant smile came over Sparks's face. It completely transformed the man from dangerous to joyful.
She's got lists. I promise I'll go through them and weed out all the crazies.
His smile dimmed.
Be careful with him. Beck or Levi?
Solo asked.
Both,
Sparks said with an almost pitying smile, as though he knew what it meant to be in a hopeless situation.
When this is over, come out to the house. Laura's quite good at matchmaking. It's time to move on.
He started toward the door he'd walked in through. When he turned back, the friendly guy was gone, and the operative was back in place.
And Solo, you know what happens if he gets out.
She nodded.
You have to disavow any knowledge of the mission, and I get to be the bad guy. The good news is I'm pretty good at that role. Just ask Beck.
Sparks nodded at the two men who had hands on Levi Green. At Sparks's nod, they released him and fell into line behind the boss, leaving Green standing there in chains, a smirk on his face.
He's right about moving on, but he's wrong about letting his wife fix you up. Laura Sparks can't possibly know what you need, Levi said, but I do. And I forgive you for hauling me in. You were only doing your job, and I've been a bad boy. Tucker, it's good to see you up and about. I knew you would come through. So ye old memories aren't coming back as fast as we would like. We can fix that. Or should I call you Stephen now?
That's not my name either. All in all, he would have preferred hypnotism to having to work with the man who'd pretty much tried to kill all his brothers. Green's eyes flared.
Ah, so it is working. If that man knows everything, why doesn't he tell us what we need to know, and we can all move on with our lives? Nina asked.
Where would the fun be in that? Levi asked, holding out his chained-together hands.
Hello. We haven't had the pleasure of being introduced. I'm Levi Green. You can call me Levi.
Nina didn't take the proffered hand.
The fun would be in us all getting to go home. And miss spending time with my best girl.
Never. This is foreplay for me and Solo. I'm a patient man. Why don't you take these things off me, baby? You know I'm not going anywhere. I intend to give you everything you want, and then I'll get what I've been waiting for all these years. Levi promised.
I'm not letting you out of the chains, and I swear to God if you touch me, I'll make you regret it.
Solo stalked over to him.
You're here for one reason and one reason only. You're going to help Tucker remember what happened and where he left that intelligence he stole from Kronberg. You'll do it, because you were there.
Oh yes, I was. I was there far longer than anyone imagines. I was there in the beginning, Levi replied. But merely telling him who he is and why he did what he did wouldn't spark his memory. We have to do this my way, or no way at all. His past was standing right in front of him, and all he could think about was the fact that he didn't want Veronica anywhere near this man. Levi Green was toxic. He was like the devil, always looking for a way in, and once he got there, he corrupted everything he touched. I have a way for you to get everything you want. You'll be doing a service to your country, too. You've seen what she's doing. You've been affected directly by it. What would you do to get a little revenge? The words floated through his brain. Insidious. They'd been insidious. He'd wanted to walk away, but Green had gotten him. Green had convinced him he could get everything he needed if he only did this one small favor for him.
Are you okay?
Nina put a hand on his arm. Green's chains jangled. See? Being in the same room is helping, isn't it? You need me to walk you through it all. I can't simply tell you. You need to experience it, because I have no idea where that intel is. I only know that you had it. I was meeting you that day, he heard himself say, but he was doing exactly what he wasn't supposed to do. He was looking deep inside. It was right there. He could feel the wind on his face, know how excited he was because soon he wouldn't have to lie to Ronnie anymore. He was going to get his life back. He was going to get his... He'd been looking for something. Something important. Something... or someone. You're close, aren't you? Green was staring at him, a fascinated look on his face. Dig a little deeper. It's right there, man. I gave you the drugs that should rebuild the connections. His gut was starting to clench, pain pulsing through his head.
Hey, you don't look so great,
Nina said.
Tucker, let it go, Solo ordered. Ariel taught you how to handle this.
You're almost there, man. Green egged him on. But the problem was, he was right. He was almost there. It was so close he could taste it. Reach for it.
Tucker, what's happening?
Only one voice could bring him out. Ronnie? A low chuckle reminded him they weren't alone. Well, that explains a lot. I assume this is Solo's doing. Hello, Veronica. Long time no see. Ronnie gasped beside him, and her face flushed.
Louis? What are you doing here?
Solo looked to Ronnie.
You know him?
Ronnie nodded.
He was dating my sister when she died. Was killed. Did he have something to do with my sister's murder?
If I did, I probably had help, Green said with a wink. Shouldn't we find out who that was? Tucker's heart felt like it sank to his stomach, because Green was staring straight at him. Like they had a secret. God, had he had a hand in killing Ronnie's sister? His knees buckled, and he stumbled toward the bathroom. He was going to be sick. 2 hours later, Veronica was still shaking as she sat down at the table in the dining room. The world seemed to have upended, and she wasn't sure she liked where she'd landed. Tucker reached out and slid a hand over hers. He was still pale. She'd chased after him, leaving Solo and Nina with the man her sister had introduced her to as Lewis Green. Her mind was still whirling, but at least Tucker seemed to be better now. "All right, let's get this over with, since we've got more company coming," Ezra said as he took a seat. "Did Solo tell you she's letting MI6 and the Germans send a rep up here?" Tucker's hand tightened on hers. "What? Why the hell did we leave the garden if we're inviting them to hang with us?" Solo sat beside Ezra. From what Ronnie could tell, they'd spent most of the last 2 hours yelling at each other when Ezra wasn't yelling at Big Tag on the phone. "We left the garden so we would have leverage. We're now using that leverage to force better conditions. MI6 and BND have agreed they do not need to question Sandra Croft. She's being issued a new passport as we speak, and we'll handle the records of her coming back into the country. Also, we'll deal with Violet's citizenship. She'll be granted dual citizenship and 2 passports, 1 U.S. and 1 German. You understand what this means?" Despite how upsetting it had been to see that man again, something good might come from it. "I can talk to my mom?" Solo gave her a smile. "FaceTime with her. Let Violet see you. The deal I've worked out is that MI6 gets to keep Jax for now. We keep Tucker. All 3 agencies get to interview Levi Green. Robert and Ariel are on their way up here with a couple of representatives. They don't know where the location is, and they won't have freedom to roam while they're here. I've taken down any pictures or mementos they might use to identify the house. It's not perfect, but it's all I've got. And with any luck, between Ariel and talking to Levi, we'll figure out where that data is." "And if MacDonald took it with her?" Tucker asked. Solo's eyes darkened, as though she'd gone through that nightmarish scenario in her head way too many times. "We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. I'll figure out something that will satisfy them. I'm not going to let them take Tucker. And honestly, Ezra already knows how he's going to break Jax out." Ezra's lips quirked up in a feral smirk. "I have no idea what you're talking about." "I'll help you if it comes down to that," Solo promised. "But if I can avoid a worldwide execution order on your head, I will. Now Nina's babysitting. I gave her noise-canceling headphones so she doesn't have to listen to Levi talk." "You should have given her a cattle prod." Ezra seemed to perk up. "Hey, Weston's got some crazy shit in this place. It's like his dungeon in the woods. I bet he's got one." "I bet he does," Tucker said with a smile that kind of scared her. She shook her head. "Will someone tell me who this guy is? I met him twice when he was dating Katie." Solo and Ezra shared a look she didn't understand. "What?" she asked, a knot in her gut. Once again, something was going on that she didn't quite understand. She was on the periphery, with no real knowledge, except whatever that look meant. It would likely rock her world. Solo's face cleared. "Nothing at all." "They think your sister might have been CIA," Tucker explained, his eyes tired. He'd had a rough afternoon. After throwing up for a while, he'd lain in bed with the lights off and a cool rag on his head, trying to get rid of a migraine. She'd lain next to him, changing the rag every now and then, her head resting on his chest and listening to the steady beat of his heart. Katie wasn't a CIA agent. It was completely ridiculous. She was a journalist. She had a degree and started working freelance as soon as she graduated. "When did she meet the man you knew as Lewis?" Solo asked. "It wasn't anything serious, at least not according to what Katie told me," she explained, trying to remember everything that had gone on at the time. It was a swirl in her brain. She said he was a freelance journalist too. They met while she was working on one of her corporate corruption stories. My sister had this crazy belief that the world was being run by this group of corporations, like an Illuminati thing. I blame my mom.
She's been into conspiracy theories since we were kids. I'm afraid my sister fell into that trap. Not that there aren't conspiracies in the world, but my sister can get a little crazy."
Tucker sighed. "It's called the Collective. Kronberg was a part of it. We're pretty sure Big Tag neutralized them the last time they tangled," Ezra continued. "He took out the head, and we're hoping it takes them years to reorganize."
"Are you telling me the Collective was real?"
She tried to make sure her jaw didn't drop.
"Yes, and I think Levi likely had some connections to them," Solo explained. "It wouldn't be the first time an agency employee worked for the Collective. He could have done double duty, reporting back to both the agency and his corporate bosses. If your sister was getting close to the Collective or what was really going on at Kronberg, they might have sent him in to keep an eye on her."
Now she was the one whose stomach threatened to revolt. Tucker squeezed her hand again.
"Baby, you couldn't have known. And if she'd told me the same thing, I would have thought she was crazy too."
How much had she missed? And how much had she been played on all sides?
"We've already established that I was likely hired because my sister was investigating Kronberg. They were going to use me as leverage against her. But they never threatened her. Not that she mentioned. If you're looking for her old notes, I don't have them. Mom and I went through her things, but we couldn't find anything of value. Her apartment was burglarized 2 days after she died. Naturally, the police don't have suspects."
"So we can assume Kronberg did it," Solo said.
"They would have gone in and cleared anything that might have implicated them. I've tried to get Levi's records from the agency, but what they sent told me nothing. He was definitely in Europe around that time. I don't know what he was working on. I know he was meeting with key assets during that time frame, but the names are redacted. Dating Katie could possibly have been his way of hiding the fact that she was an asset."
"Also, we can't believe a word that comes out of Levi's mouth." Ezra sat back. "He lies like the rest of us breathe."
"He'll tell the truth if it buys him something,"
Solo insisted. But the words were flat, as though the speaker knew she wouldn't be heard.
"In this case, finding that intel buys him a lot."
"And if what it buys him means the truth never getting out?" Tucker asked.
She hadn't thought about how that would affect him. He'd been tortured for years, and his pain might be weighed against governmental secrecy and corporate profits.
There was a knock on the door.
Solo pushed her chair back and stared at Tucker, her expression completely open. "I don't know that letting this particular secret out does anything but hurt the country. I don't know that it was ever going to be allowed out in the open. But I promise you'll be free. I might not be able to give you the justice you deserve, but I can give you your freedom."
Somehow she didn't think Solo was merely talking to Tucker. She turned and walked out. Tucker leaned over. "Are you okay?" Her heart ached for him. They'd had such a good start to the day, but reality was already infringing. She let her head rest against his.
"I'm fine. It was a shock to see him again. I hadn't thought about Louis in years. He disappeared after Katie died. I'm more worried about you. They want you to remember what happened, but it made you sick."
"Did I thank you for taking care of me?" His hand found her hair and he stroked her. I'm usually the one playing doctor.
"You're not playing, babe. You are a doctor, and an incredible one at that," she replied. Sometimes she forgot how much he didn't know about himself. It wasn't natural, and she needed to remind him. "You're smart, and you know a lot about the workings of the human brain."
"I don't think neuro was what I wanted to do." He kissed her forehead and sat back up.
Now that she knew this side of the man, she was fairly certain he'd been honest with her that day in Paris. "You didn't? You wanted to be a GP like your grandfather. You told me you wanted to go back to the States and find a small town and be a general practitioner like he'd been.
He was still for a moment, and he let go of her hand. He took a deep breath and stood. "I'm going to grab some water." She looked back at Ezra.
"Did I say something wrong?"
"I think he's trying to avoid getting sick again," Ezra replied. "You gave him a big dose of information, and he wants so badly to chase it down in his head. I would bet he got a flash of something. It's okay. He knows how to handle it. Trust me, this is not his first time. But it's worse today because Levi's here. He can seem perfectly reasonable, you know. Levi, that is. When he wants to, he can be very convincing. That's why he's good at his job, and he got away with it for years. He's going to keep getting away with it if Solo has her way."
"What are our other options?"
She wanted what Solo was offering. Solo offered her a way to get out of this tangle and get back some normalcy. She wanted it badly. But maybe she should ask some questions. Ezra huffed out a laugh and ran a hand over his hair. "Our other options are running like hell, getting every single person we love into legal trouble, and probably getting shot at the end. I know she's offering us the best possible way out. The trouble is, I don't trust that she can make it work. Solo, she means well, but things go wrong. She trusts the wrong people."
"Like the president?"
It was hard to believe, but according to Tucker, Solo worked with the president and his closest allies. Apparently, she'd missed meeting one of the mysterious, perfect gentlemen who surrounded the president. I think Hayes will back her up as long as he can, but he's a politician. He'll do what he has to do. Solo is being Solo. She's tilting at windmills, trying to be the hero, and I worry it won't end well. But I don't have another play, and being stubborn hasn't worked for me so far. I'm going along with it because there's nothing else to do. She's doing it for you, too." Tucker returned, a glass of water in his hand. "She's trying to get your job back." "I don't want my job." Ezra sounded wildly stubborn again. "Why would I walk back into a nest of snakes that bit the hell out of me already?" "Even if you don't, if the agency restores your good status, you'll have options you don't right now," Tucker argued. "You'll be able to work in the open. By the way, when you hire on at MT, negotiate with Charlotte. Big Tag tries to pay in French fries. It almost worked on this guy named Boomer." Ezra smiled, an expression that made him look years younger. "I'll remember that. But I don't think I'll go that route either. I don't know what I'll do." "She's trying to give you options," Tucker said. "She's trying to assuage her conscience." Ezra shook his head. "Hell, I don't know what she's trying to do anymore. I don't know what I'm doing either. I'm not this man. I can't think around Kim, never have been able to. She's a force of nature. When she's around, it's like the rest of the world falls away. But then I remind myself it's hard to see anything through hurricane winds. When it goes bad, Tucker, I need you to come with me. If it goes bad, you know what I value," Tucker said with a solemn air. Ezra nodded. "We all do." He seemed to shake something off. "I'll try to set up a call to New York tonight. It's going to have to be later." She would get to see Vi. The thought brought tears to her eyes.
"I'll look forward to it. And I'll try to remember anything I can about Lewis's relationship with Katie. My mom might know something more. I'll ask her about it tonight."
She glanced back at Tucker, and he'd gone stock still.
"What is it? Are you okay?"
He looked like he'd seen a ghost.
"Well, hello, Veronica," an oddly familiar voice said.
The German accent was soft, as though the harsh edges had been rounded out by speaking all those other languages he spoke.
I didn't think I would see you again. And Stephen, I certainly didn't think to see you, since you were supposed to be dead. It seems Dr. MacDonald stole much from you both."
A chill snaked along her spine, and she turned. Arthur Dwyer stood there in his tweed jacket and pressed slacks. He looked like the young academic he was, well-groomed and confident. He'd been one of the many doctors who wouldn't give her the time of day at Kronberg unless it was to treat her like an underling. He'd lied to Rebecca and Ariel. She'd thought the man barely noticed she was alive, but that wasn't true. He'd been watching them all those years ago. He'd known exactly where they'd been. "What the hell is he doing here?" Tucker asked the question before she could.
"You weren't informed?" Arthur asked. "Perhaps that's why Miss Solomon is arguing with the intelligence officers. They're getting quite heated."
Ezra stood. "I think I'd like a word, too." If Arthur was intimidated by all the eyes on him, he didn't show it. He merely looked around the room before settling on Ronnie.
"I came because I made a terrible mistake before. I didn't understand what was going on. I should have known what Dr. MacDonald was doing and intervened. I didn't realize Stephen was playing such a dangerous game, and you were caught up in it."
She felt a hand on her shoulder and knew exactly who was laying a possessive claim on her. The day had been brutal on him. She hadn't missed the fact that Levi Green had alluded to someone helping him trick her sister. It wouldn't have been Tucker. She had faith in him. He needed to know that. She reached up and put her hand over his.
"No need for intervention. We're fine. And yes, Dr. MacDonald stole years from us.
But we'll move on and have many more together," Tucker said resolutely. It was good to have a man who wanted her. Not for a second since he'd woken up had he made her question if he wanted her. His adoration was a balm for the years he'd been gone.
"Many more."
Arthur stared at them for a moment, as though trying to figure out how to handle them.
"Well, it seems we were wrong about you, Stephen. I was told you didn't remember your past, and that was why we were needed."
"My name is Tucker, and you're not needed at all," Tucker said. "I'd like to know why you're here, unless you're going to tell me you're German intelligence." Arthur shook his head and took a seat opposite Ronnie.
"Not at all. Though I am working with them. I am exactly what I've been for years, a doctor specializing in neurology. But I recently moved into a new role at Kronberg. It has come to the attention of the board of directors that Dr. MacDonald continued her experiments after the board kicked her out. I'm ashamed to say my predecessor attempted to cover it all up, though I understand the impulse. When we realized we still had a problem, we immediately informed our intelligence agency.
So when we broke in and grabbed all the files you've been hiding for years, you decided to come after your victims," Tucker said, his voice colder than she'd ever heard it. She wasn't sure that Tucker should be admitting to breaking into Kronberg.
"He's not being literal. When someone broke in, that's what he means."
Arthur chuckled.
"Oh, he's being perfectly serious. Breaking into his old employer's building is a minor crime compared to what MacDonald forced him to do. But you should know that Kronberg will not prosecute in any way. We're willing to ignore what happened if you help us find out who aided MacDonald. We mean to clean house. If anyone on the board or still employed knew what MacDonald was doing in our labs, we will deal with the problem."
"Of course you will," she said demurely, because arguing with him would do nothing. There was the sound of hurried footsteps, and then Ariel and Robert were striding in the room. "Tucker, are you all right?" Robert walked right up to Tucker and pulled him into a fierce bear hug, complete with masculine back-pounding. "God, man, I was so fucking scared for you." "I'm fine," Tucker said. "How is Jax and River?" Robert took a step back. "She's okay. She lost it that first night. Buster did too. I swear that dog howled the whole time she was crying. But she got to see Jax today. She said he looked good, but complained about the food. She's being positive. She's hoping this is over soon and they can go home." "She misses Bliss," Tucker said, with a wisp of a smile.
"We miss you."
Ariel moved in, wrapping her arms around Tucker too. He'd built a family from the ashes of his life. He hadn't been completely alone, and she was so grateful for that. He'd found brothers. Who was he? Not deep down. She knew his soul. But who was waiting for him out there in the world? What had he been doing at Kronberg? She'd been so worried about whether or not he'd been lying to her all those years ago that she hadn't considered he would have a family on the other side of this. Did Violet have another grandmother waiting out there? Did she have other siblings? He was young, but that didn't mean he couldn't have had a wife and kids. "Are you all right?" Arthur was staring at her.
"It doesn't seem you're part of that happy reunion."
Ariel was asking about Tucker's health, and Robert had a hand on his shoulder, as if he was worried about letting him go. Tucker was smiling again, looking open and happy with his friends.
"I've spent plenty of time with him over the last few days,"
she replied with a breezy smile she didn't quite feel. She didn't think he had a wife, at least not one he'd been married to at the time. He wouldn't have slept with her if he had. He wasn't that kind of man. Still, there could be an ex, and they could have had kids together. He could have a family waiting for him. If he got his memory back, how would it work?
"Hiding out from the bad guys is a great way to cement your relationship."
A single brow rose over his eyes.
"Bad guys? I certainly don't see myself that way. I'm a practical man. It does no one any good if MacDonald's research gets out. It would cause someone to take it up again, and it would make your boyfriend there famous. I don't know that he wants that."
"It also saves the company you work for from any number of lawsuits," she pointed out. "No one with any reputation would want their names associated with Kronberg. You wouldn't be able to recruit at all. You might end up having to hire more doctors of my caliber."
"Whatever do you mean?"
Arthur asked. "I didn't have the grades for that position, and you know it. You knew it then. It was why you were such a prick to me." Arthur shrugged.
"Perhaps I'm just a prick to everyone."
She watched him too carefully to buy that.
"You were quite polite to those you thought were worthy. Some might even say you were good at kissing ass. Why did Kronberg hire me?"
"I assume they hired you because they thought you would be a good fit."
"I wasn't in charge of that. Dr. MacDonald asked for you specifically. I was surprised she wanted such an inexperienced nothing of an intern, but that wasn't my place."
Ah, there he was. She'd been waiting for him to show up again. "You weren't at the airport that day. I'm talking about the day Stephen and I went to France. You were in the lab. So why would you tell Rebecca and Ariel that you saw us there? That's what you told them a few weeks ago when they interviewed you." His face went blank, and then a bland expression came over him.
"Memory is a funny thing. It's certainly not foolproof. Sometimes memories lie to us, and then we find ourselves lying to everyone else. I wonder how your boyfriend has lied to you. Do you think committing a crime shouldn't count if you don't remember you committed it?"
Arthur stood and smoothed down his blazer as Solo and Ezra entered, followed by the man she'd seen that night at the garden, the one Tucker had identified as the new head of MI6. There was another man with him, and he'd been there that night as well. He'd been standing with Arthur. German intelligence. They'd sent the big guns. Solo explained she would show everyone to the rooms they would be using for their stay here. Still, she had an answer for Arthur. He was forced to commit those robberies. He was under the influence of powerful drugs. He didn't know another life. So no, even if he remembers them, they don't count. Arthur's eyes flared with something akin to victory, and she knew she'd made a mistake. Ah, but what about the crimes he committed before he ever took a drop of MacDonald's drugs? What happens when he remembers why they called him Razor? And what happens when his victims were closer than he'd ever imagined? Think about that, Veronica, while you sleep beside him tonight. Think about all the things he could have done. Because you don't know him. He turned and followed Solo out. Ronnie tried to quell the fear his words had stoked. It was a rational fear because she knew him. She knew Tucker for who he was deep inside, and that was all that mattered. Chapter 11. Tucker stared at the man in the cage. It was a small cell that contained only a cot. It wasn't meant to function as an actual jail cell, though Ezra claimed it would work for their purposes. It was nothing like the stark white rooms he'd been kept in. His cell had been technologically advanced, down to the toilet that could also give MacDonald medical data. The walls had been thick glass. There had been no privacy, nowhere to hide. She could plunge them into complete darkness or blind them with light. He'd always preferred the darkness. He could pretend in the darkness, pretend he wasn't where he was. In that bald, raw light, there was nowhere to hide. He almost felt sorry for Green. He knew what it felt like to be locked inside a cage with people staring at him from the outside. He knew what it was like to watch his brothers dying, and to not be able to get to them. He definitely knew what it felt like to be watched, to have no privacy at all. Green sat in the cell Clive Weston probably used for sexual games, and stared right back at Tucker. "You're sure you want to do this with her in the room?" He wasn't sure of anything. The answers he'd been waiting years for were about to be revealed, and he wanted to run. He wanted to take Ronnie's hand in his and leave. Fuck the past. He wanted a future. But he couldn't have one if he didn't do this. He was trapped again. He only knew one thing for certain. She stays if she wants to. I'm not hiding anything from her. Good or bad, she was part of this, and had every right to know. She sat beside him, their arms brushing. "We're all here now and you've had dinner, so could we get to talking?" Ezra wasn't sitting. He'd paced for the last hour like he was the one stuck in a cage. Levi had made a bunch of diva-like demands that hadn't gone over well with Ezra. Solo had argued that they should just give him what he wanted so they could get things moving. What Levi had wanted was a shower, fresh clothes, a 3-course meal with wine pairings, pillows and blankets made of specific materials, and access to Netflix. He'd gotten the shower and clothes, a sandwich Nina had made for him, and Solo had sat right outside his cell drinking an expensive red wine straight from the bottle and flipping the bird his way every time he talked. Tucker thought it was a misstep on her part, because Levi seemed perfectly happy to get any sort of attention from her. But then maybe that had been her point. Solo was smart enough to know she was at least part of the reason Green was here. They all needed to remember that. Green sat back looking relaxed for a man in a prison cell, but then he'd spent the last several weeks in one. "What do you want to know? My life is an open book." His life was highly classified, and it was obvious that there were things not even Solo had been privy to. He believed her when she said she hadn't known he'd worked for Green. Rupert Milburn was seated on a bench that probably had been the site of many a spanking, a notepad in his hand. He'd taken off his jacket, but not the tie he was wearing. He looked very British and important.
You can make it easy and tell us where the subject left the intelligence he stole from Kronberg.
The German intelligence officer was sitting close to Dwyer. He was still in his full suit. He'd been the quietest of the three.
Yes, I don't understand why we need all this drama. Mr. Dwyer has the date the intel went missing, if that will help this fiasco along. The dates are meaningless since I have no idea where. What should we call you? Green asked in an amused voice, staring Tucker's way.
How about my name? It was as good a place to start as any. His real name. It would be so odd to hear it. Would he recognize it? Or would it be one more meaningless fact that didn't connect to him in any way? That was his real fear. He would hear the truth, and it wouldn't mean anything. What's my real name, and why was I at Kronberg?
I don't want to give away all my secrets, Green said with a smirk. After all, the sandwich here was much better than my last prison. Bologna is another form of torture, and the view is superlative.
Ezra's face had gone red, because that last bit had been directed straight to Solo. You can talk, or I'll make sure your view is of me waterboarding you. You like that, don't you, Levi? Does the agency know how you waterboard female operatives? Did you put that in your report? Or did you leave it out like the part where you shot me? It was a reminder of how much evil this man had done. Tucker had gotten the full report on how Green had treated Kayla Summers during a mission in Mexico. He'd had her waterboarded the same evening he'd put a bullet in Ezra and left him for dead. He'd been trying to find a way into the garden at the time. At the time, they thought he simply wanted access to the Lost Boys. Now it was easy to see what Green had wanted. Access to Tucker.
In my defense, I wasn't the one doing the torture part. I did question her, but I was gentle about it, he said, affecting an air of innocence. The nearly drowning her over and over was the drug lord's part.
Who you were working with, Solo pointed out.
Allies can be found in the strangest places.
Levi's head swung Tucker's way.
Rather like I found you.
Where did you find me? He needed answers, no matter where they led. I wasn't working for the CIA.
Heavens, no. You were in the last year of your residency at a highly rated hospital, Green explained.
He could feel the softness of the scrubs on his body, smell the fabric softener. He wore them pretty much everywhere. There wasn't time to do much more than sleep when he wasn't working. But it would all be worth it when he got home. He liked the city, but he missed the town he'd grown up in. He missed the way the mountains looked during wintertime. What hospital? He shoved the memories away. They'd been there all day, playing and teasing at the edge of his mind, tempting him. It would be better to view this all academically. He was investigating, nothing more.
If I tell you what hospital, you'll send one of McKay Taggart's hackers in, and I might have missed something when I erased you from existence, Levi said with a shrug. You're the special one, Tucker. You got erased twice. See, I went to the trouble of creating the Stephen Reeser persona from top to bottom. Do you know how hard it is to create a person from nothing? It's not like the old days. I get so sick of boomers telling me how easy millennials have it. You know what those bastards had to do when going undercover? Fake ID, fake a couple of basic records, and they were in. Now I have to deal with the fact that every single record is online and I won't even go into social media. Do you know how long it took me to fake those pictures of you summiting Everest? We couldn't find any evidence of me. It wasn't like they hadn't all looked. They had facial recognition software scouring the web for any sign of him. MacDonald erased Stephen Reeser, and she did a damn fine job of it, Levi revealed. I mean, she did it with the others too. But in Robert's case, he was in the military and her dad was on the Armed Services Committee.
That's pretty powerful. But what she did to Reza, being able to erase my work, well, that was impressive. Of course, by that point in time, she knew there was something smelly going on in her lab. "You're going to string this out as long as you can," Ezra said with a frown.
"I don't think this is what we agreed to."
Arthur Dwyer looked up from his tablet.
"He's supposed to give us the data we need, not turn this into some kind of weeks-long holiday. It's important we do this quickly."
Green groaned. "I told you this wouldn't move fast. The data we need is stuck in Tucker's head. He's not going to simply remember if I tell him he's from the western United States and he was the valedictorian of his high school. Will explaining he came from a small town help him find that data? Though I will note that it made things way easier when it came to erasing him from existence. Hamilton High School was so easy to hack." Hamilton High. He'd been a year behind his brother. There was something funny about that because he was years younger than his brother, but he knew, somehow, that he'd been a junior when Ace was a senior. "Tell me my brother's name. I know my mom called him Ace. I think that's a nickname." Green's eyes lit up. "There it is. You see, it's coming back." He really had a brother. The thought made every muscle in his body tense. Please let his brother be alive. "I want to know his name." Ronnie sat forward. "Are his parents alive? Do we know if he was married?" Of course she would worry about that. He put a hand on her back. "I don't think I was married, baby. I get flashes of someone who I think might be my mother, and I've had a vague recollection of a kid who I think is my brother, but there's no girlfriend or wife in my head. Only you." "You can't be sure, though," she whispered, gently biting her bottom lip. It was an easy tell that she was nervous. "He wasn't married, but that's all I'm giving you. If I told you everything, then you wouldn't need me anymore." Levi mused. "I think I'll keep those names to myself. But how about I do tell you that you were involved in this case for more than a paycheck? I didn't have to give you the old do-it-for-your-country speech. When you realized what I'd found out about Dr. MacDonald, you would have done anything to bring her down." Green watched him expectantly, as though he should do something now. But there was no whisper along his brain. There was nothing but that sense of something veiled in his head, like his past was hiding right under the surface of the ocean, and all he needed to do was swim to find it. But the fucking water was full of jellyfish waiting to sting him. A soft hand covered his, and he immediately relaxed. He glanced to his right, and Ronnie was there, giving him an encouraging smile. He wasn't alone. It gave him the strength to turn back to Levi. "So you're going to pepper this conversation with hints in order to tease my brain? Or is it torture? Because it feels a lot like torture." "Levi, you said you would cooperate." Solo stood, glaring into the cell. "If you're not going to, I can have Sparks take you home. I don't think he's left the country yet." "I am helping." Green stood, walking to the cell bars and grasping them while he stared at Solo. "I told you it won't work if I lay it all out to him like the plot to a movie. That's not how the cure works. And you're welcome for that. Ariel, could you explain this to them? I'm surprised Rebecca isn't here treating her precious patient." Ariel looked to Solo. "Earlier today, I received a couple of documents that supposedly make up the protocols surrounding the cure Dr. MacDonald may or may not have created." "Why would I lie about that? You wound me, lovely Ariel." Green put a hand to his heart in a dramatic gesture. "I can wound you," Robert offered the threat with a low drawl. "And none of us will let Rebecca around you. Not after what you did to her last time." A frustrated growl came from Green's throat. Again, not my idea. I didn't kidnap her. Minions. You can't find good ones these days, can you? But back to the issue at hand. The cure and its protocols were among the treasures we found at the former Black Ops site known as the Ranch. He felt his teeth grind. The ranch had been their op. Jax had risked everything for that data, and Green had swooped in to take it, leaving a swath of destruction in his path. You stole that. Green shrugged. You say potato and all that. Now, Ariel, what did the protocols require when the subject is in the first few weeks of transition?
To wake that part of the brain up. It suggested that the subject be allowed to recover the memories using hints of the truth.
Ariel admitted grudgingly.
What I believe the drug did was close off the pathways to long-term memory storage. It's been suggested that even though the pathways are now clear, the brain has to relearn how to use it, to rewire itself. If we simply give Tucker the full story, his mind will work with whatever we say, rather than what's actually there. It's why I agree this might have come from MacDonald. It's rather insidious. We could present Tucker with memories, and he could potentially think they're his. I believe this was MacDonald's endgame.
The ramifications hit him hard and fast. Was this what she had been working toward? She erases our memories fully, and then she cures us, gives us new identities, and we don't even know what existed before.
Was that what she was planning to do to you?
Ronnie asked. Maybe, he replied. She wanted to create soldiers without ties to anyone but their commanding officers, and I believe she wanted to also create sleeper agents. He would be the perfect sleeper agent because he doesn't ever know he is one. Green agreed with what sounded like admiration. She could rewrite a whole human life. Is that what you want me to do with Tucker here and now? Because if I fill this out like a report, he won't have nuanced memory. He'll have what I tell him. I want to read those protocols, Ezra announced. Does Rebecca have them?
She's already sent me her notes, and our friends have read them too.
Ariel placed careful emphasis on the word friends to let him know exactly who she was talking about. The ones who definitely weren't friendly. I agree that we should attempt to follow the prescribed treatment according to MacDonald's work, Arthur said. But her work was also incomplete. I have some thoughts on a few pharmaceuticals that could help the process along. Yes, the intelligence officer beside him nodded. We've talked this over between the three of us, and we agree this is the best route to take. Ronnie stood. You are not giving him any drugs. Definitely not any drugs created at Kronberg. And we're going to read everything that Mr. Green sent. I might not have Rebecca Walsh's stature in the medical world, but I have a stake in this. And Tucker was an amazing doctor. He's not an experiment. I think reading Dr. MacDonald's scholarly works could help enormously, Green agreed. It's one of the things I was going to suggest you do, but she did mention some drugs she thought could help the process along. No drugs, Ronnie insisted. He reached up and laced their fingers together. He would likely do anything, risk anything to get those memories back, but he wasn't the only one making the decision. No drugs. He could make this work. We won't wait forever. Rupert stood. You should think about that. Arthur is offering you a way to speed this process up. The longer you wait, the less patience we all have. And don't forget you have a friend in a holding cell. We can only keep him for so long, before we turn him over to the proper authorities. It's obvious to me this is going nowhere tonight. Hopefully tomorrow morning will yield better results. The German officer stood with him. I agree. I think this is all a mistake. He shouldn't be in civilian hands. Arthur seemed to understand the evening was over too. I will write up my suggestions and let you all read them.
It's ridiculous to discount what the drugs could do for him. Stephen, when you're ready to get serious, talk to me.
They walked out the door. Solo stood, frustration evident in the set of her shoulders.
I'll talk to them. You don't have to take anything you don't want to, Tucker. I'll make that clear.
Solo stalked out of the room, both Green and Ezra watching her the whole time. Robert moved over, taking a place beside Tucker. I promise I won't let them near you with more drugs.
What did Rebecca say?
She was the expert. Ronnie would still make the final decision, but he thought they should listen to the doctor who was probably closest to MacDonald's research. Well, the closest one who could remember anything about it.
She said she wouldn't allow you to take anything manufactured at Kronberg,
Ariel replied. She doesn't trust easily. Green had to throw in his 2 cents.
I wonder if that was because she spent that night under the influence of the time dilation drugs. I think I have your notes on that experiment somewhere. I could be coaxed into sharing. How about it, Tucker?
Shame washed over him. He didn't even remember what he'd done to Rebecca, and he already hated himself for it. What would it be like to read his own notes on the subject? Ezra moved in close to the cell, every movement predatory. This is your game, isn't it? You're going to parse it out until there's nothing left, and that's when you'll strike. You're a snake in the grass, waiting to sink your fangs in. Green didn't back down.
Oh, I've been waiting for this particular game to start for years, Beck. Years. Do you understand the patience I've shown? Lesser men would have caved, would have blundered when it all fell apart, not me. So yes, at the end of this I'm going to strike, but I assure you, you'll get everything I promised. That intelligence will come out and will move the game along. So what are you going to do about it, Beck? Ezra, whatever you want to call yourself, you can't get away from the fact that you weren't strong enough to hold her.
Ezra's hands went through the bars and he pulled Levi roughly against them. I held her just fine. I'm not the one moving heaven and earth to get her back. If I wanted her in my bed tonight, she would be there. You're the one she doesn't want.
If that's true, then why did I have her? She was good, you know.
Solo's good at everything, and sex is no different. Levi replied with a smirk.
I will admit, it's hard to not compare every single woman I fuck with her. Ezra, please don't kill him.
Ariel sounded like she was talking to a tiger who hadn't decided to pounce or not. I can probably figure the whole backstory thing out myself, Tucker offered. He would have slit Levi's throat by now. And the flooring looks pretty easy to clean. Robert gave him a nod. If there's one thing we've learned at McKay Taggart, it's to put down a tarp if you're on carpet. This is some well-sealed wood. Go for it, man. Ezra let go and took a step back. He's not worth it. But I swear, if you say one more vile word about Solo, I'll change my mind. Now you're going to answer a few questions, and you're not going to play around. But playing is so much fun. Green seemed upset that he hadn't gotten the fight he so obviously wanted.
Isn't that what you all call it? Playing.
I like to play. Did you or did you not recruit Tucker? Ezra got straight to his point. Green's lips closed sullenly. Ariel crossed her arms over her chest and faced him. Short questions and answers are in the protocols. Green sighed. Yes, I recruited him. I discovered something was going on with Senator Hank MacDonald several years ago. The agency had heard rumors that the senator might have sold out American military troop movements to the enemy in exchange for money and power. My investigations into MacDonald led me to his daughter. I needed someone who could get close to her,
Someone who could speak her language. Surprisingly enough, most young doctors don't want to work for the agency and potentially get their balls shot off. I needed someone with a brilliant medical mind who didn't mind giving it all up. Why? Why would I give it up? A vision of a younger Levi Green floated across his brain. He was sitting across from Tucker at an outside cafe. Boston. They were in Boston. A cafe in the West End. I met you in Boston. Yes, Levi said. In a small cafe. That was where we met. Do you remember what we said? His whole body tightened as he searched for the memory. He could see Levi sitting there. He'd had a mug of something in his hand and he'd leaned over, an expression of concern on his face. He couldn't remember what season it had been, but an overwhelming sense of hope had come over him. This was what he'd been waiting for. All the months of worry, and now he finally had something he could do. I was worried about something. Something or someone? Green asked like he knew the answer to the question. Which he did. Someone. It was definitely someone. I was upset, and you gave me options I didn't have before. I'd almost given up when you came to talk to me. You had proof. Maybe it was a picture. A pain started in the back of his head, but he ignored it. Why can't I remember? Because you're trying too hard. Ronnie soothed a hand down his back. And you've had a rough day. I think we should try this again in the morning. He's been sick once today. Or we could do what we'll have to do in the end. Green rolled his eyes. We can go to Paris. The answers are there. Me telling him who he used to be won't work. He's got to see it, hear it, smell it. I'm sure you would love that, Ezra said. Every time we move you is a chance for you to get away. I don't want to get away. Green's voice went low. I'm right where I want to be. He straightened up and sounded more professional. I want that intel. I worked my ass off for that intel. Years I spent working with him to get the intel, and I think it all fell apart because of a girl. That's right, Veronica Croft. You took one of the best assets I ever worked with and cost him everything. You want to know why we're all here today? Why I'm in this cell and your boyfriend can't remember his own fucking name? It was you. Tucker stood up and kind of wished Ezra had followed through with his instincts. Hey, you don't talk to her like that. I didn't do anything, Ronnie whispered. I didn't know who he was. Wait until you realize what she cost you, Green replied, ignoring her entirely. When you remember what you gave up for her, that's when you'll understand why they called you Razor. I wonder what you would have done if MacDonald had given you a couple of days before she wiped your mind. I think you would have shown that betraying bitch beside you how you earned that nickname. Robert stepped in front of him, barring the path he'd been about to tread. Hey, he's pushing you. Don't let it work. I think Ronnie's right. It's late. We can start again in the morning. Get another couple of fucks in, Tucker, because I assure you when you remember, you won't touch her again. Green taunted. Tucker saw red and tried to plow his way to Green, shoving Robert out of the way. Levi took a step back, holding up his hands, but Tucker didn't care. He hit the cage, shoving his arms through and trying to get at the asshole. The tension of the day threatened to push him over the edge. Hey, hold up, brother, Robert said. But for a moment, it was another Robert he saw. He pushed back, and they weren't standing in Clive Weston's dungeon. There was dirt at his feet, and the bus had just pulled away. He was angry. So angry because someone had said something about him, something nasty,
Something about all Seegers being trash, and how it wasn't surprising their dad walked out. Hey, come on, he's an asshole. What he says doesn't matter. Tim, calm down. Mom will kill you if you get suspended. A pain flashed through him as his knees banged against the floor. Wyoming. It happened in Wyoming. They'd been in the last days of fall. A sharp snap in the air that let him know it would snow soon, and the bus ride into the high school 3 towns over would seem to take forever. It was only okay because his brother was with him. This Robert was younger. He was wearing a letterman's jacket. Ace. Their mom called Russ Ace, and he was Bud because he was younger. He was Russ's little buddy. Russ was his big brother. His brother was always there for him. Russ was the best big brother, until he was killed in action. Except he'd known. He'd known it wasn't true. He'd known somehow that Emily was lying about what happened. I was looking for my brother. That's why I went into McDonald's team. So many things fell into place. Emily, Robert's wife, she'd told him. She'd freaking told him, and he hadn't been smart enough to figure it out. Yes. Levi Green was standing close to the bars again, looking like the manipulative asshole he was. Imagine it. You were a brilliant resident working at one of the most famous hospitals in the world, Massachusetts General. You gave it all up because you didn't believe that report, the one that chronicled how your brother and his whole team died. It was a good report. I believed it. But there was something in the records that made you think your brother wasn't dead. You always did suspect Emily, didn't you? Robert gasped, and his jaw dropped. What? Emily? My ex-wife? She's not really an ex. You didn't divorce her, Green pointed out. Ariel killed her, from what I was told. That makes you a widower, not divorced. Robert, what's happening? Ariel asked. Is it true? There were tears in his big brother's eyes. I was looking for you. Flashes of his life hit him. His big brother standing up for him, never leaving him behind, even though he was little and obnoxious. I couldn't leave you behind. I couldn't let you go. Even after I knew what she'd done to you, I knew you wouldn't remember me, but I had to save you. You're Tim Seeger. Ezra breathed the words. Holy shit. You went looking for your brother and you found Levi. He set you up to get on McDonald's team, gather all the intelligence on our project. And because of me, he found his brother. It just took him longer than expected, and that wasn't my fault. Again, you're welcome, Green replied. Ezra started to argue with Levi, but Tucker could barely hear them. Robert was on the ground with him, staring at him with what could only be described as wonder. Is this real? Tucker nodded, reaching out for the brother he'd spent years looking for. Is it weird that I don't think I can call you Russ? I think you'll always be Robert to me now, but Mom will definitely call you Russ, or Ace. She called you that because when you were a kid, you wanted to play baseball all the time. You wanted to be an ace pitcher. He tried to remember. It was still foggy. Mom's alive, I think. She'd been alive. She'd hugged him and asked him to bring his brother home. Alive and well and living in Wyoming, Levi answered. I'm sure she'll be thrilled to get her sons back. She could have had them back years ago, Ezra argued. You've always known, you bastard. Robert might not remember, but Tucker did. Robert looked shocked, but it hit Tucker like a freight train. He'd done everything to find his brother. to bring him home. A piece that had been missing, that horrible aching feeling that he could never talk away or drink away, fell softly into place. "Hey, brother." Robert smiled, lighting up his whole face. "Hey, brother." He hugged his brother, wrapping him up. "I know you don't remember, and I'm only starting to, but this is true and real, and we missed you. Emily lied about everything. Mom and I, we missed you so much. We never stopped wanting you to come home." Strong arms held him tight. "I knew you were special the first time I met you. Ariel, meet my brother." Ariel's smile was luminous, the tears on her cheeks glistening like happy diamonds. "My sweet brother-in-law, and I can't believe I get to be an auntie." For all the tension of the day, this was worth everything he'd gone through. And there was only one person here who was missing. Ronnie. He looked back, but she was gone.
"She snuck out," Ariel said quietly. "I think Levi got to her."
The truth should get to her. Green stared at the door Ronnie had left through. "I'm absolutely certain she's the reason you got caught. You were supposed to meet me that day. You didn't make it to the drop-off. You disappeared, and I didn't see you again until you showed up on the agency's radar. When you should have told us who he was." Ezra walked to the door. "Robert, I need to discuss the new situation with Solo and give Tag and Damon an update. That asshole is the reason we couldn't find your mother. I suspect he convinced her to hide for protection against retaliation." His mother. God, he had a mother, and she loved him. The thought made his heart feel far too tight for his chest. His mother would flip when she realized she wasn't only getting her sons back, she was getting a grandbaby to spoil. "I thought it was best," Levi admitted. "And then I didn't care." "I'll stay and watch him," Robert promised. Ariel went on her toes and kissed her husband.
"And I'll go make us tea. Tucker, you have to go talk to her. Unless you believe Levi."
He watched as Ariel and Ezra walked out the door. And he was left with his brother. And the man who'd given him a shot at finding his brother. The man he shouldn't trust in any way. "You should believe me." Green's eyes had gone hard. "Everything was fine until you got involved with that woman. We were almost out. You would have met me that day and we would have left. Instead, it went to hell." He couldn't see it. She wouldn't betray me. She would. She had a lot at stake. After all, her sister was involved, Green pointed out. "How did you know her?" Her sister's death was an agony for the whole Croft family. Green shook his head. "No. No more information tonight. I'm tired. I've been dragged across the ocean, and I'm not talking again tonight. In the morning, we can renegotiate." "Ezra will love hearing that," Robert pointed out. He turned to Tucker. "Go and talk to Ronnie." Why had she walked out? For all the joy he felt at the breakthrough he'd just had, anxiety bubbled up. Levi Green knew how to lie, but he also knew when telling a bit of the truth could be devastating. He nodded his brother's way and went to look for the woman who should have been his wife. To find out if she was the reason he'd been sentenced to hell. Chapter 12. Ronnie's hands were shaking as she walked out of the house and into the gorgeous gardens. Maybe she wasn't supposed to be outside, but she couldn't breathe in that house right now. She stood under the elegant roof of the gazebo at the edge of the garden and tried to calm down. "That's right, Veronica Croft. You took one of the best assets I ever worked with and cost him everything. You want to know why we're all here today? Why I'm in this cell and your boyfriend can't remember his own fucking name. It was you. The words rang in her ears. She'd sat and watched as Tucker had regained the precious memory of his brother, and all she'd been able to do was run through 1,000 scenarios where she'd tipped off Dr. MacDonald. It didn't make sense. She hadn't talked to MacDonald. Not often. She'd been the lowest-level researcher there, and MacDonald barely acknowledged her presence until the day she'd knocked on her door in Paris. Before that day, she would have said MacDonald didn't even know her name. But she had talked to people in the labs. She'd mentioned on more than one occasion in the beginning that she didn't think Stephen Reeser was the mean guy he pretended to be. He'd had a fierce reputation, and she'd told a couple of the women she'd worked with that she didn't think he was so bad. She'd even told one of her friends there that she'd spent some time with him. She'd wanted to gently rehab his image. Had that been enough to make MacDonald take a second look at him? Would he ever forgive her if it had? "Are you all right, Veronica?" a soft voice asked. She turned, and Arthur was standing just outside the gazebo she'd fled to. He was a shadowy figure, but there was no way to mistake his accent. "What are you doing here?" "I was out for a walk. It was tense in there, and the two intelligence agents are not great traveling companions," Arthur admitted. "I was getting a drink when I saw you running out here. I was worried. I know you don't believe me, but I really am here to save Kronberg's reputation. I'm not some undercover agent, and we used to work together." She wasn't buying that one. "You never liked me." He shrugged. "I didn't know you. I didn't think I needed to know you. Allow that it's been a couple of years, and discovering how MacDonald used us all was a humbling experience. I'm not as arrogant as I once was. Is Stephen all right? Or should I call him... what is his name now?" "Tucker." It fit him better than Stephen, though that wasn't his name either. Tim. Timothy Seeger was his legal name, and his brother was Robert. He'd gambled his life to find his brother, and then he'd risked years of his investigation for her. How close had he been to getting out? Would he have made it if he hadn't taken her with him? Tucker. I will try to call him that. It's odd, because he's so obviously Stephen Reeser to me. Is he feeling all right? Have you examined him? I heard he was sick earlier in the day. Arthur managed to sound concerned. Physically, he seems fine. His vitals are strong. Rebecca had been monitoring him, she explained. She knew she should walk away, but it occurred to her that Arthur had answers she needed. He was sick earlier because he pushed a memory. How much do you know about what was done to him? Enough to have nightmares about it. Arthur stepped into the gazebo and settled himself on the bench across from her. MacDonald's research is terrifying, and yet I'm intrigued. I can't help it. I'm a doctor. There are practical applications to her research that could do great good in the world. Yes, it was the ethical quandary they all had to face in classes and seminars. Most medical professionals didn't have to deal with it in the real world. They didn't have to decide on a basic level if the horror of how an idea came to be made the idea unusable. The end justifies the means? I think if we start down that road, you know where we go. Of course, he said mildly, as though they were talking about the weather and not torturing people to further medical science. That's the argument. If we use those dark experiments, we open them up to being normalized. It's Pandora's box. We all know that on an academic level. It's different when the box is sitting right in front of you, and all you have to do is open it, and almost guarantee yourself a Nobel Prize. You truly believe you could keep a lid on where the research came from? Because I know I would go straight to the press, she threatened. He needed to understand he couldn't walk in and continue MacDonald's research. He waved her away.
Too many people know. I couldn't kill them all.
I'm sorry. That was supposed to be a joke. She stared at him.
My sister was killed because she knew about the research. So forgive me for not finding it funny.
I'm sorry, Veronica, he said quietly. I didn't mean to offend. I wanted to talk to you about my role in all of this. You were right that I wasn't at the airport that day.
Yet you knew I went to Paris with Tucker.
It was odd how easy it had become to think of him as Tucker. He was a new man, though she'd seen sparks of him in her Stephen.
Who would Timothy Seeger be?
His memory was coming back, and she would have to deal with a third version of the man she'd come to love.
After Rebecca left, there were rumors about what had happened between them.
Arthur's voice had gone low.
Nasty rumors. She left without notice. A doctor of her reputation doesn't do that. It was the first time I got called into the corporate offices. They were worried about a possible lawsuit.
Rebecca had told her a bit about what had happened. Tucker had told her more.
I know what happened between them. What were the rumors? That Stephen had done something he shouldn't have. It ranged from him saying nasty things to her to outright physical violence. It was a nightmare scenario for the company, and they wanted someone to quietly investigate. They didn't trust MacDonald to tell them the whole truth. They didn't want anything on the record. I was on MacDonald's periphery. They asked me to find out the truth. I hired a private investigator. He followed Stephen and rapidly discovered that the two of you had a much closer relationship than you wanted people to understand. That was when the company brought MacDonald in. You being close to Stephen was a red flag, but it was another relationship we were truly worried about.
She was confused, but then that seemed to be her perpetual state lately.
What relationship? And why would I be a red flag? For the most part, Stephen was boring. He went to work and went home. But he did visit your sister on occasion, and that was why we brought in MacDonald.
Arthur said every word carefully, as though measuring them and watching for her response.
He didn't know my sister.
She'd never heard the two connected in any way. Except apparently they'd both known Levi Green.
Her sister had been incredibly secretive those last few months.
The only reason she'd met Lewis had been by accident. She'd popped by her sister's place on a lark, and he'd been there. He'd been the one to introduce himself as a man who dated Katie.
If she'd come a different day, would it have been Tucker who opened that door?
She shook that feeling off.
He did know your sister, Arthur said, not unkindly. I've got a file on Stephen. I haven't shared it with the agency, because they haven't asked. They can be a bit arrogant, I've found. I'll let you read it. I've got pictures of him at your sister's flat, 2 days before he left for Paris. When the investigator asked some of the neighbors about him, they said he frequently visited.
Tears pulsed behind her eyes, but she wasn't going to cry. There was an explanation.
My sister was working on a story about MacDonald. He and Levi Green were investigating MacDonald. Maybe that's how they met. But Stephen never told you he knew her.
She shook her head.
He was secretive about what he did. I think he was trying to protect me. Or he had another reason.
She wasn't going to listen to this.
I should go back to the house. You would have been excellent cover for him, you know.
Arthur stayed right where he was.
You gave him a reason to go to Paris that weekend. And a couple traveling together is much less suspicious than a man traveling alone. I find it interesting that he never asked you to go anywhere with him before that day, the day he was planning on turning over the information he stole. He'd kissed her before then. During those last few weeks, he'd carefully spent time with her. Had he decided she was a good bet as cover if he needed a traveling companion? Now that she looked back, she could see how he'd drawn her in over the course of a few months. He'd stayed away for a long time. He'd only gotten truly close when he'd decided he wanted out. He hadn't mentioned he knew her sister, even when she'd talked about her sister. But something didn't make sense. This information he stole, it was stored at Kronberg. You're telling me Kronberg didn't know what MacDonald was doing, yet the information was stolen directly from Kronberg? Well, obviously the man they stole the information from knew. Arthur replied as though it should be evident. The former CEO has been dealt with, as has his entire staff. But he was a careful man. He kept records of everyone who worked with MacDonald, and we want to know who else at Kronberg knew. That's all we're doing. Everything will be turned over to our allies, but we need that list in order to clean house. You need that list in order to cover it all up. She might be naive about a lot of things, but not this. I have to worry about our stock prices, he allowed. And I have to worry that the agency is going to screw us all over. All you have to worry about is whether or not Stephen is intending to use you again. He stood. I'm going back. I'll send you the file, and you can decide for yourself. She didn't want to see that file. She wasn't even sure if it mattered. He couldn't have had a hand in Katie's death. According to everything she knew, he'd had his mind erased days before Katie had been killed. But what if he'd given Katie up? He couldn't give her up. They'd already known. But they hadn't known how much information Katie had gathered. He could have told them everything, and that could have led MacDonald to kill her. It was an endless, agonizing loop in her mind. She didn't even realize when Arthur had walked away. Hey, are you okay? Tucker jogged up to the gazebo, glancing behind him to where Arthur was walking into the house. Did he do something to you? He'd caused her to doubt everything she knew. No, I'm fine. Tucker closed the space between them, and his hands cupped her shoulders, eyes shining in the moonlight. You can't leave like that. I don't want you to be alone with that man. We have no idea what he's capable of. We don't know anything at all. That's the real problem. She stepped back. There was so much between them that hadn't been there before. A mere half an hour ago, they'd been some undefeatable team. And now she wasn't sure what to do. Tucker's face fell. What's wrong? So much, but she settled for her original worry. You heard what Levi Green said. Somehow I'm responsible for you getting caught. Have you thought about that for 2 seconds? Have you thought about how you'll feel if you get concrete proof that I'm the reason you lost your memory? No, he admitted. Because it doesn't matter. Because I just found my brother, and that's way more important than assigning blame, Ronnie. Come here. I don't blame you for anything. If you somehow tipped them off, you didn't mean to. He looked so gorgeous in the moonlight, like her every fantasy come to life, and it seemed cruel that he could be taken from her twice. Kronberg hired a PI to follow you, because they were worried you'd raped Rebecca. Even in the moonlight, she could see the way he paled. I wouldn't do that. I didn't do that. I know I didn't. Rebecca would have told me. I hurt her. I did, but I did it to save her.
MacDonald was going to take her to Argentina, and if Rebecca had gone, she wouldn't have come back. She would have been forced to work for MacDonald, or she would have been killed. You couldn't tell her why? You couldn't warn her? You had to torture her. Do you know how insane that sounds? Anger was building, because they were right back to where they'd been before. He'd kept secrets, and it had cost everyone around him. Tucker stared for a moment, as though that had been the very last thing he'd thought she would say. I don't know what my thinking was at the time. I can't remember. But I know I'm sorry for hurting her. I had to have thought it was for the best. She knew it was the only excuse he could give, but she couldn't handle it right now. How about my sister? Was it for the best that you didn't bother to tell me you knew her? His eyes flared in obvious surprise. What? I thought you said Levi knew her. Are you saying you saw me with her? Sweetheart, I can't remember. I'm starting to get some of that time back, but I certainly don't remember your sister. That's an awfully convenient excuse. It's not an excuse. And I assure you it's not convenient. The words that came from his mouth were practically arctic. He took a deep breath. Look, it's been a long day. Why don't we go inside, open a bottle of wine, and talk about this? Whatever this is. She would be in his arms before she'd emptied the glass. She wanted to be in his arms right now. She wanted nothing more than to believe everything he said and write Arthur off completely. But why would he send her a file if he didn't have proof? I don't know that's a good idea. It seems to me we've both jumped into this relationship without thinking about it. It had taken him exactly a week to have her madly in love with him again. Even after everything she'd gone through the first time. Even as she'd been separated from her daughter, she'd wanted to be with him. His stare threatened to burn through her. I think about it all the time. I think about you all the time. Ronnie, what is this really about? It was about the fact that he was too good to be true. It was about the fact that she wasn't at all sure she could trust that anything positive could happen to her. How can I trust you when we don't know what happened? What do you think happened? She didn't want to go there, but they had to talk about Katie. You were involved with Levi Green. Levi Green was involved with Katie. Arthur claims he has a private investigator's report that puts you at my sister's apartment a few days before you disappeared. Why would you have gone there? Why wouldn't you have told me? He shook his head. Maybe I didn't know she was your sister. I showed you pictures of her. He might not remember, but she did. During the last 2 weeks before MacDonald took you, we had a couple of dates. Always away from the office. I had to meet you at the restaurants we went to. I showed you pictures of my sister and my mom one night when we were having dinner at a place in the Marienplatz. You looked at her for a long time and pointed out all the ways we looked like sisters. You even told me you didn't think your brother looked like you at all. We had a long talk about genetics. It had been a nice night. She'd enjoyed talking about their families and the long discussion about how DNA worked. He'd been so smart, but not in a way that made her feel dumb. He'd listened to her. He'd lied to her. If Arthur was right and Tucker had known Katie, he'd stared at that picture and not mentioned a word to her. He seemed to think about it for a while before he finally sighed. I don't know why I would do that, but I had a good reason. How do you know? Because just a few days ago, you made me believe in myself, he replied in a fervent tone. You told me a whole lot about how I'm good now, and that meant I had to be good then. Are you telling me one conversation with a man who is known to lie and is probably here to fuck us all over, and suddenly all the sweet faith in me is gone? She didn't want to think like this, but she also had a hard time wrapping her head around all of it.
She was my sister.
Yes, and Robert is my brother, and I gave up everything to find him. Everything, Ronnie. He put his hands on her shoulders, squeezing gently, as if he was afraid she would disappear if he let her go. I was working at Mass General. That means my degree is probably from Harvard. I was a kid from small-town Wyoming, and I had to have gone to an Ivy League school to have earned that residency. You know how much work that had to have been. I wanted to find my brother so much I was willing to erase my existence to do it, and I'm standing here telling you I don't care if you're the one who got me caught. She couldn't help the tears that fell now, because she felt the loss of her sister so deeply in that moment. That horrible emptiness made her reckless, and she didn't think about a thing she was saying. It was all there in her head, and it spat out like a noxious poison.
And your brother is alive. My sister is dead. I won't ever see her again. My mother is missing a part of her soul, and Violet won't ever know her aunt. I'm having a hard time believing that it didn't have something to do with the files you stole. You knew her. You spent time in her apartment.
He backed away, his hands coming off her like she was too hot to touch. Have you even seen this evidence? She hadn't. In a lot of ways, she was talking out loud, going through all the worst possible scenarios, because that was what she did. She usually didn't do it with the very person she was feeling threatened by.
No. But Arthur said he was sending it to me.
His gaze sharpened, and she wondered if she'd made a mistake telling him. Yeah, he's sending it to you. Did he ask for your email? She shook her head. He doesn't have to because he's had you under surveillance for years. He works for the company that let Hope MacDonald ruin lives, but he sends you some evidence that I'm a... What? I would love to know exactly what I'm being accused of. She'd been hasty, and she knew it, but she couldn't back down.
You lied to me.
Oh, it's more than that, he said, bitterness dripping from every word. We all know I was a liar. Let's get to the real problem. You think that if I knew your sister, then I probably slept with her. Even though from everything I've learned, I didn't have that reputation. I wasn't known as a playboy around the office, but you immediately go there. I think what you're really wondering is if I killed her. She shook her head.
I know you didn't plant the bomb. You were in Argentina.
Was I? Maybe I wasn't. Maybe Mother kept me somewhere closer so she could program me to kill your sister. Mother loved to play those games. She loved to pit us against one another, to show us how much control she had. He swore under his breath and turned away. MacDonald. I don't fucking call her Mother anymore. What was she doing? She hadn't meant to take him back to that place.
I'm sorry. Arthur was pretty convincing. He makes sense. You were working with Levi, and he had a relationship with my sister. We know that Kronberg probably hired me as leverage against her investigation. Why wouldn't you know her?
Knowing her and fucking her are two different things. And it's obvious you're questioning whether or not I got her killed. I don't even know how to defend myself.
I can't defend myself because I don't remember. He could show you pictures and I can't answer them. This is crazy. We should take a step back and think about this.
She hated the way his shoulders slumped. Is there anything to think about? He took a deep breath and straightened up. You should go and find Arthur and get the truth about me. Maybe you can write up a report and let me know how much I fucked up your life. Tears began to fall.
That's not fair.
None of this is fair. None of my life has been fair since the day my brother got sold out. He turned away from her. I meant what I said. I could have found out you turned me over personally to MacDonald, and I would have known you thought it was best at the time. I would have believed you. The fact that you can't do the same for me merely lets me know we don't feel the same way about each other. It had all gone so wrong. She hadn't meant for it to go this way. Can I not have a few minutes to think this through? He didn't bother to turn around. You can have all the minutes you want, Veronica. The truth is, I could get my memories back and lie about them. I could tell you anything at this point, and there would always be a question in the back of your head. If I had anything to do with Katie, you'll wonder if I had something to do with why she died. I don't come back from that with you, and I definitely don't with your mom. Her fists clenched at her sides. I just want to know what happened. And I can't tell you. He turned, and there was resignation in his eyes. Since the moment I realized I was Dr. Razor, I've had this sick feeling in the pit of my gut that I wasn't worthy of anything I've gotten since I was rescued. Until a few nights ago. You made me believe in myself. Like most things in my life, it wasn't real. But I'm going to hold on to it. Damn it, I'm not trying to... I don't know what I'm doing, Tucker. But you do. His hands were on his hips, and he was staring at her like he'd never seen her before. You're going to look at that evidence, and you think you're going to make a decision about our relationship. The truth is, you've already done that. You did it the minute you asked yourself if I was the kind of man who could sleep with your sister and then make a baby with you. You said you knew my soul. You won't be with a man like that. Suspicion is an insidious thing, and there will be a whole lot of it in the next few weeks. They'll come at us from all angles, and we won't be strong enough to withstand it. Maybe if we'd had more time, but we didn't. What exactly was he saying? He was blurry in front of her, tears affecting her vision, and she worried maybe he'd always been that way. A vague dream of something she'd missed out on. I don't understand. But I do. It will always be there in the back of your mind. He turned away again and was down the steps before he spoke. I'll sleep somewhere else tonight. You should be careful around Arthur. And Levi. They've both got their own agendas, and you are merely a pawn to them. When this is done, no matter how you feel about me, no matter what you decide I've done, I'm not giving up my daughter. You should understand that. I understand that you might think I'm not good for her, but she's mine too. I have no intention of giving her up. And tell Sandra if she thinks she can hide Violet from me or scare me off, she's wrong. After all, you know how far I'll go for my family. Tucker. She wasn't sure how it had gone so wrong. She hadn't meant to break up with him. When she'd first walked out, she'd been terrified that he would be upset with her. How had she ended up here? She didn't want him gone. She only wanted to understand what had happened. Tucker, she called out. But he didn't turn around. She was left alone with her doubt and the aching pain in her chest that she'd lost something she could never get back. Chapter 13. Okay, bud. How about you tell me what the hell is going on with you and Ronnie? Robert placed a beer in front of Tucker and sat down on the bench overlooking the front drive. It was a long, unpaved road that led to the highway. He couldn't see it from here even if it had been light enough to see much of anything at all. The road to the country house wound through the woods. They were isolated, and it was easy to imagine a time when carriages and horses would have been the main forms of transportation. A simpler time, when no one erased minds, and when a man could force the woman he loved to stay at his side, since she would be dependent on her husband. Yeah, men had it good then. No one forced drugs on them, and their wives and daughters were property who couldn't change their minds because some asshole planted a seed of doubt. Hell, back then maybe he could have simply shot Arthur Dwyer and gotten away with it. No pesky CSI types or tons of security cameras always waiting and watching and stopping a guy from having fun. See, when you don't talk, I wonder what's going through your head. And I don't think it's good, Robert was saying. You know you can't kill Levi. He was actually trying to be helpful today. You were the one who wasn't cooperating. It had been a rough day, and the evening hadn't been much better. He'd gotten very little sleep the night before, and it was starting to get to him. After the scene at the gazebo, he'd found a guest room and lain in bed for hours, going over all the ways he hated his former self. In the morning, he'd gone downstairs, but Ronnie had been in the breakfast room, and it was apparent she hadn't told anyone that they'd had a major blowout fight and broken up. She'd given him a wan smile and sat next to him during breakfast before going back to the room they'd shared. She hadn't come down to the holding room where he and the rest of the group had spent hours trying to jog his memory, with Levi Green pushing every single button he could. Then dinner had come, and while she'd cooked it, she'd announced she wasn't feeling well and had gone to bed early. He already missed her. So I am going to assume that Ronnie's excuse that she wasn't feeling well was exactly that, an excuse to not be around today. His brother didn't seem to mind that he wasn't responding. Robert kept going. You weren't all over her like she was your dying child, so I'll make the secondary assumption that the two of you had a major fight, and that's why you've spent the entire day looking like a puppy who got kicked. I'm not a fucking puppy. He got enough of that shit from Big Tag. Robert groaned and sat back. Damn it. Ariel's right. You're being a dick. What did you do? He huffed and turned to his brother. You want to play Am I the Asshole? I want to know what's going through my brother's head. I'm worried about him because my brother can find a way to smile through the worst parts of life. He never gets dark unless he's worried he's done something wrong. He was the asshole in this case. Robert was trying to help, and it wouldn't work to tell him he wanted to be alone. He knew it wouldn't work because it hadn't worked when Robert had told him the same thing. He'd simply held on until Robert was ready to talk. He'd been his brother's shadow, and he hadn't even realized he was Robert's brother then. Now that they knew they'd grown up together, gone through life together, he accepted that there was zero way Robert gave up. It was a miracle he'd waited this long to confront him. He could talk now, or his brother would be on his ass for hours. We had a fight. Maybe they could handle this like men. He'd said what happened, and Robert would nod, and they would drink beer. Obviously. What was the fight about? See, this is why I think Tag is an asshole. He tells us to be men and suck everything up, but he made us go to all that therapy and now we think we should talk about things. I don't want to talk about it. Robert chuckled and took a drink of his beer. That's the funny thing about Tag. He whines about men not being men anymore, and then he's the very person who makes you talk. Because beneath that veneer of toxic masculinity beats the heart of a man who cares. I also sometimes think Tag decided he wouldn't lie to himself, so why should he bother to lie to anyone else? On a personal level, of course. On a business level, he's a spectacular liar. Tucker went quiet for a moment, but his brother never moved, merely sat there waiting. She thinks I slept with her sister, Tucker admitted. What? This was why he didn't want to go into it. It was a shocking accusation, and yet was it really? You slept with her sister? That hadn't come from Robert. Solo stepped out from the side of the house, staring at him like her eyes were laser beams, and she could cut him right there. Robert frowned her way. Eavesdropping is beneath you. Hello, spy, Solo replied, pointing to herself. And besides, Beck is listening in on the other side. I told him my side was better, but he's got to be argumentative. Tucker stood, glaring as Ezra stepped from his place. Thanks, Solo, Ezra said, You know, just because you get caught doesn't mean you have to rat me out. Solo ignored him, turning to Tucker.
I'm sorry. You weren't cooperative today, and that's not like you. I had to try to figure out what's going on with you. I'll be honest, I hadn't thought about Ronnie. I thought she was tired. You two were fine yesterday.
Ezra shook his head. I knew it was Ronnie. They didn't talk at breakfast this morning, and I'm pretty sure he didn't sleep with her. I caught him sneaking into one of the guest rooms in the East Wing last night.
I thought you went to bed. Damn, but he'd been certain he hadn't gotten caught. He wasn't sure why, but he wasn't ready to tell everyone they weren't together. Maybe he was still thinking, still trying to find a way out of the trap.
I wanted to make sure our friends all stayed in bed, Ezra explained. He moved around to the porch. I don't trust them.
None of us trusts them.
Solo stepped up next to her ex.
But we need them.
He had to admit, they were a good-looking couple. Solo was a statuesque blonde, an Amazon of a woman. Most men would look small compared to her, but Ezra was her male counterpart. He was taller than she was, broader, and oddly his looks complemented hers. He actually looked more handsome when he stood beside her. He liked the way Ronnie fit under his arm when she cuddled up, how her head would rest against his chest. He'd missed her all night long. He was afraid he would miss her for the rest of his life.
And that means we need Tucker to work with them, Solo continued.
Robert stood beside him, completing the standoff. He's doing his best.
That's not what you were saying 3 minutes ago, Ezra pointed out. I believe you came out here to do exactly what we're trying to do.
Yeah, well, he's my brother. I get to be irrational about him, Robert replied. I don't like the two of you ganging up on him. We're trying to pull this thing off. That means we have to work together, Ezra argued. Normally, unlike Tucker here, I would stay out of all the personal stuff. I would love to give him his privacy, even though he doesn't deserve it. Hey, Robert began.
Nah, that's fair.
Despite the fact that his whole life seemed fucked, he had to concede Ezra had a point. I watched him and Solo fight once while eating a bag of popcorn and betting on the outcome with Owen. Still, they should be upfront about it. Robert didn't seem as eager to be reasonable. It was a big brother thing.
I think I asked about 10 times today what was wrong.
Solo's boot tapped against the ground.
Look, I get that you and Veronica are having problems. Maybe you could have a couples session with Ariel. But Rupert isn't happy with how this is moving along, and the Germans weren't thrilled either.
Tell Rupert he can bite my ass, Ezra replied.
Solo's hands were fists at her sides. Yeah, that sounds about right. Do you have any idea how hard it is to smooth things over for you? You've got the subtlety of an angry bear. We're not in a power position here, and we won't be until we know where that intel is. They won't let us sit out here forever.
And I won't let them rush my brother, Robert argued. I won't let them push a bunch of drugs on him. It's been a day. We all knew it would take a while. I want to know what happens if MacDonald took the intel and it's gone. Tucker had spent all day with that possibility gnawing at his gut. It's the most likely scenario. If I had it in my hands when MacDonald caught me, it's gone.
I don't think she had it, Solo said. If she had that information, she wouldn't have run from Kronberg.
She's right. Ezra was softer now, as he turned his focus from his ex-wife to Tucker. If she had blackmail material, MacDonald would have used it. She wouldn't have fled to Argentina. Her money dried up. She needed that money to continue her work. It's precisely why we started robbing banks, Robert said. So logic points to the fact that you had to have dumped the intel somewhere. You knew MacDonald was onto you, and you hid it.
I hid it somewhere in Paris.
It was a daunting thought. It's not exactly a small city. It would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. Solo nodded.
I agree. We've also got to account for the fact that it's been years, and it could have been thrown away or moved or destroyed. I know the truth is we probably won't find it, but I think they might be appeased if they know it's not out there.
Tucker, if you remember what was on that report, I need you to never tell anyone, Ezra said, his voice low. My worst-case scenario is you're a living record of those names. Robert's hand came to his shoulder, and he took a sharp breath. I hadn't thought of that. You have to lie. If you remember those names, you can't talk about them.
I don't know I'll have a choice, Tucker replied. I have to do whatever it takes to get Jax out.
I'll get Jax out, Ezra promised. I won't let him rot in jail. I've already started looking at options.
I will help. Solo moved up the steps to join them. I've got some safe houses he can use. You too, if you need them. But if we can find the intel or prove to them it's been destroyed, things will be much easier. We won't need safe houses or aliases. Jax and River can go home to Colorado. You can go to Wyoming if you want. We might be able to find Sasha's daughter, if there's any information about him on the report.
He wasn't the only one with skin in this game. Robert had promised Sasha he would look for the daughter he'd only vaguely remembered. I'll try harder tomorrow. Solo sighed, and there was a weariness in her eyes.
Thank you. I'm going to take the night shift with Levi. Nina needs a break.
Ezra moved past her. No, you won't. I'll do it. I don't want you anywhere near him.
He's in a cell.
Solo started to argue, and then stopped.
Thank you. I would prefer to not be around him. I appreciate it, but... Ezra.
Don't. It sounds weird coming from you. Ezra had a hand on the door. The normally indomitable Solo suddenly seemed hesitant.
Thank you for handling Levi, Beck. In the morning I'll talk to Rupert and smooth things over. I'll let him know we'll give it another shot, and maybe we can think about letting Ariel try hypnosis again.
That would be good, Ezra replied. They were so going to do it soon. Like hard do it soon. Despite his own problems, he kind of wanted to pop some corn and continue watching this particular show. He deserved the eavesdropping. Think about what I said. Ezra looked back at Tucker and Robert from the door Solo had just walked through. I'll do anything I have to do to protect you. He would break Jax out of prison, help Tucker get away if he needed to. Ezra would put his own life on the line. Ezra Fane hadn't been born in McDonald's lab, but he was one of them. Thank you, brother. Ezra stopped for a moment, as if the words had shocked him. He nodded slowly. Always, brother. He disappeared, following after Solo. I don't think you can know what that means to him, Robert said. Tucker sighed because they were going to get back to what he didn't want to talk about. He knew it. His blood brother could be stubborn about getting to the root of a problem. I don't think I know anything. The things I think I know prove to be false. Now that the peanut gallery is gone, let's get back to the part where you explain to me why Ronnie thinks you're sleeping with her sister, Robert insisted. There was nothing to do but tell him the truth. According to Arthur Dwyer, I knew Katie Croft. He claims he has proof that not only did I know who she was, I spent a lot of time with her. She must have seen it by now, and notice how she didn't come running back to me today. What kind of proof? Robert asked. Tucker shrugged. I would assume it's photos and maybe correspondence. Apparently, during the last few weeks at Kronberg, they had a PI following me. He could be lying, Robert argued. Photos can be faked. That report doesn't mean anything. It does to Veronica, since I never bothered to mention that I knew her sister. He went back to the bench and his beer because he needed that damn beer. She showed me pictures of Katie, and I never told her we had a connection. Of course, now I have no idea what our connection was, so her mind has gone to the worst possible place. To say I did not take the accusation well would be an understatement. And I know what she's really worried about. She thinks you might have gotten her sister killed. Robert whistled and sank down beside him. Damn. I was hoping you'd been an asshole about her potentially outing you. I could work with that. I don't know how to work with you might have killed her sister. That neatly summed up the problem. Katie was alive after I was taken to Argentina, but we don't know that I didn't come back. MacDonald could have made planting that bomb my first assignment, and I was probably wiped a dozen times after that. I can't know. I'll probably never know, and that means this will always come between us. Unless I can prove who did it. Maybe the team should take a hard look at this case. Which team is that? His brother wasn't thinking logically. Because we're down a bunch of men. Sasha and Dante are dead, and Jax is in jail. I think the team is pretty much you and me and Owen. And Ezra and Ariel and Rebecca and River. Robert stared out over the yard. All we have to do is call Theo, and he'll come with us. Don't underestimate Buster. He can distract a person with his cuteness. Or his farts. That is one gassy dog. Like that rescue dog we had. Mom was always complaining that we needed to change Astro's food. The memory floated over him easily now that he wasn't fighting for it. He let the vision of a big dog who always looked like he was smiling settle on him like a warm blanket. He could see the dog trying to lick him, remember how much he'd loved him. He'd walked into the shelter he'd volunteered at when he was in high school and immediately fallen in love with the massive ball of fluff. Robert was quiet for a moment. Do you remember her at all? Mom. I remember she loved us. I remember her hugging me and begging me to bring you home. Green hadn't been willing to give their mother's name up. He told them they could have that information when they released him. Naturally, he'd tried to run an end around on the fucker. I gave Adam everything we've learned, including the fact that I went to Hamilton High somewhere in Wyoming. There's got to be something Green missed. Some thread Adam can pull now that we know where to look. I should have started looking weeks ago. Robert took a long swig of his beer. I don't know why I didn't. Because you bought into Emily's bullshit that we were all estranged. For a man who was married to a psychologist, he wasn't exactly self-aware. When his first wife had shown up in Munich, she'd caused all sorts of chaos. One of the ways she'd manipulated Robert had been to tell him he no longer spoke to his mother or brother. All the while, she'd known exactly who Tucker was to Robert, and she'd kept it to herself. It was cruel, but then she'd sold her own husband to MacDonald, along with Robert's whole unit. I didn't know any better, Robert said quietly. Kind of like you don't know what happened between you and Katie Croft. Tell me something. Did Ronnie ask you to leave her alone? Not exactly, but it had felt like rejection. She said we'd moved too fast. Robert chuckled. Yeah, that ship sailed. You have a daughter. You have to deal with each other. That's what I said. Right before he'd walked away from her. She was crying. A lot. I wanted to hug her and tell her everything would be all right, but I didn't think she would accept that from me. Did you offer it to her? He'd walked away because he'd been so angry. No, but I did threaten her if she tried to keep me from seeing Violet. So there's that. Robert finally looked at him, a frown on his face, and then he shook his head and laughed. Dumbass. All right, let's figure this out. You want to figure this out, right? Because if you don't, this is an excellent off-ramp. You'll have to decide how to co-parent when you're not together, but otherwise this could be a clean break. God, no. He'd sat up most of the night trying to find a way to take back the shit he'd said. I don't want to break up with her. I love her. I know that deep down. I loved her then. I was willing to risk everything to take her with me. I remember the feeling of looking down at her asleep in bed and knowing we were getting out. That had to be the day I got caught. And if Levi's right, and she's the reason you got caught? He shook his head. This was the easiest decision he'd made. She didn't mean to. She might have inadvertently tipped MacDonald off, but she wouldn't have betrayed me. You don't know her, Tucker. But I do. He wasn't sure how to explain it. It's a feeling deep inside. I trust her. It's the same way I trusted you when I first met you. I didn't understand it at the time. I thought it was me being needy, but I knew you deep down. I know her too. I reacted poorly. I can't stand the thought of her not feeling the same way about me. I'm in a corner, and I don't know how to get out. Then we'll figure it out together, Robert promised. He wasn't sure his brother was the best resource he had. Or we could go to Ariel and ask her what to do. Robert grinned. That's what I was going to suggest. Hey, I married a smart woman. Let's go catch her before she gets in that big bathtub. I want to live like English nobility, man. I'm pretty sure every room in this house is about sex. That tub is big enough for like 3 people. My shower has shampoo, conditioner, and what I'm pretty sure is lube. Right there in the shower. He hadn't gotten to use it on Ronnie. It was sad. He was sad. Maybe he should do what Jax had done. Go out and buy the cutest dog he could find, and they could both look miserable until Ronnie gave in like River had. The rich know how to live, brother. Robert stood up. They hadn't been rich. They'd been comfortable, though. Their mom had made sure they had a nice house and food on the table. She'd worked hard to ensure they had good educations. Was she still there, waiting for her sons to come home? We're going to find her, you know. We're going to find Mom. I hope you remember more, Robert admitted. I can barely get any of it. I worry I'm different and she won't recognize me. I don't want to hurt her. He stood beside his brother. He got the feeling they'd done this 1,000,000 times before. Brothers simply sharing space so they knew they weren't alone. Somehow, some way, they would find their way home. She will thank God every day for bringing you back. And she'll adore Ariel. I hope I get to introduce her to Ronnie and Vi. Despite what he'd said to her, he wasn't sure how much standing he would have when it came to custody of his daughter. Ronnie could tell the courts he was a